Those of you on the phone, Bryce, can you hear me? Good. County, who else there with you?
This is Jacob Gallion from Riley County. I'm here with Sherry Taylor and Lori Harrison.
Okay.
We have a couple others joining us.
Going to be?
Pat Jones and Don Schaffner.
Okay. Anna in Barber County, are you on? County, are you on? Stopper. Okay. Lori's last name. Thank you.
Yep.
Kim, are you on? Kim Pruitt? Diana. Yeah. Nancy Mitchell from Meade. To turn it over to Scott to begin the meeting. We have those on speakerphone, and you should be seeing the webinar online. Thank you.
Okay, good morning all. Yeah, still we have to, Randall said, have to. Both of them, your name. Meeting here in Holton. We're planning until 5. I don't will actually go that long, so we've got the time if we need it. So if you have questions throughout the day, make sure you ask them. We got time to cover those. We're going to bring in lunch, probably about 1:30. So do a working lunch, take a little break, everybody can grab their pizza, and then we'll kick while out to the right. Okay? Any questions on facilities or anything like that? Very good. Section. We've got some members of the subcommittee here today. Back in the back is the chair of the GIS subcommittee, Ian Battles. Sitting next to him is on the committee. Mark Whalen is on there. Ship is on. Oh, sorry. I totally did. And I really can't think of your last name. Shaw. Shaw. Thank you. So on the committee. And then we also have Jessica Fry with AOS, who is going to be one of the presenters today. And during break or whatever, feel free to contact anybody that's on that committee. I'm on it as well, but don't contact me because I don't have the answer. GIS, and that's about it. First, you all know how this process of GIS data remediation is going to go. I'm going to turn it over to him. He's going to lay out how the project is put together, and I think you'll get a good understanding of what the purpose of this meeting is. Did you hear all that?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. A few slides, and we'll get into the meat of the agenda. If you have any questions, this is kind of an overview of the GIS project. Jessica Fry is going to go through the details of project A and C that I'll talk about here in just a minute, and all the good work they're doing at it. I'm going to talk about Master Street guys, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. Sort of the ties into the GIS enhancement connection, 911, all that good stuff. I'm going to take a year to go through our GIS data standard, walk through that. That was a big word among our GIS data committee here in January, February, early March, put that document together. Sherry very led the team on and had a lot of GIS subcommittee. We sent that local government, various services get incorporated, a lot of comments, and I think we have a really strong document, so she's going to comment on that. And it's been I'll try to answer questions, but the idea behind the data that we have today. Really, it's pretty simple, but there's a heck of a lot to it. Up a GIS database that meets the following criteria. Statewide, we need to cover every county, every piece. It's consistent with a common set of data layers. That data model that Sherry will go over in detail. Center line service boundaries. A data set that's current and maintained regularly maintained. The question or Sherry will talk about this. Well, how current does it need to be, and how often do I need to update? What the answer is, other than to say it needs to be as current as it needs to be. Some American answer to that question, but if you're changing every day, you'll be submitting updates on a regular data changes monthly, then the currency is sort of driven by how frequent it's changed. But none of the data needs to be regularly maintained because this database eventually becomes what drives call routing in NG911. Data accurate and reliable, again, because of the use of the data. It's no longer a row centerline file that somebody uses in a map that gets plotted and hung on a wall. It's a row centerline file that is used to answer a call for geocoding process that then is used to say, how do we route this call for emergency dispatch? So this is the data that is changed, is standardized again, meaning applicable Kansas and NG911 data. So, through that list, it's really pretty simple, but this, I can easily say, is the largest project I've ever been involved in. The largest GIS across state and local discussion. So this is massive in its scope across states and its perspective on local jurisdiction. So, where do we start? The statewide gap analysis project, there's an RFP released just about a year ago, late last August. It closed. Proposal closed in October. The proposal was awarded in December to AOS, and we had a meeting in December. So months is the active stage of the project. We follow the procurement rules where we have a procurement negotiating committee and RFP advisory committee that review all these various proposals from the West chosen as our vendor for analysis QA portion of this project. The project is broken into 3 phases. And there's project A, B, and C. The project is the gap, so comparing against the current data against what these newer standards are to determine fit for use. Going into the remediation phase, so taking that the current state of the data and remediating it or fixing it so it meets these newer standards. Project is the QA testing to ensure that whatever was done in the remediation phase actually these newer standards. So some of these the RFP as it was written was bidders could choose to bid on project A or C. You could do gap analysis and QA testing, but you couldn't do A, B, and C. In other words, you couldn't do the analysis, the QA testing, and remediate the data. So we need some sort of checks and balances there. The map of our region tables the 5 to 6 regions where your region 5. The status of where we're at as far as project A, region 5 where we're starting on the gap analysis reports, is that right? And 1 now actively doing data remediation, so things are moving on really according to schedule. Rachel White, our 911 program manager, he could show us exactly where we're at, but I think generally speaking, Scott, we're pretty much scheduled. Project so far, I think we're scheduled. So on the gap analysis, what Dale is doing, and Jessica will go into a lot more detail in these reports, but going to my region, evaluating the current quote-unquote area reports. Just because you get an report back from AOS, certain things are flagged doesn't necessarily mean your data is bad. Just flagging things, it just doesn't mean the newer standard. It might be there are fields in the new standard that your data doesn't currently have, so it doesn't mean your data is bad necessarily in error. It's just things that changed in the newer standard, and this is what needs to be data to bring it up to the newer standard. So that's why there's so then report used in Excel format and also in file geodatabase to provide the local jurisdiction for data remediation. And I guess we'll go into one. Project B, they are approved vendors. The approved vendors also had to respond to this RFP that was released last summer. So if the remediation, if the GIS company wanted to get in a report now, it's too late. You had to respond back to the same RFP last summer. So there are ACCI, GDR, geocom, single mapping, and visual. Several are here with us in the room today. Once you get your area report, you can choose to either remediate the data on your own or work with the agent vendor. And if you choose to do so, there are funds available through the 911 Council. We've got some questions about that process, how to acquire those funds to hire companies to help remediate that data. There you know more about that. There are people have questions. This is following you. Jump in. Yeah. If one of these 5 ends do your remediation, see your analysis report, all of that to your P contact for each of the jurisdictions in the region. You have to look over that, and then you're going to use these vendors. You can forward that analysis report on to one or more of the vendors and propose. Prepare the bidding proposal and they'll send it back to you. They may also copy me on that. In some cases they do, some they don't. You decide which one of the vendors that you want to utilize then you let me know. We've chosen to do that email. That's the easiest way to do it. It's the best way. Once order them to proceed as your vendor, when I send an email, I do the proposal, then I do Randall. Randall issues a work package to your vendor, and they'll begin the work. The package is due. You'll receive notification from Randall or me that that's occurred and that they're going to begin doing your work. They submit the data, it goes through the QA process. Once it's through the QA process, then we will pay them. You'll be out of it. You won't have to bother anything other than obtaining an invoice from them and sending it to me. Probably the easiest way to do that is when they're done, say, hey, shoot me the invoice in an email and copy Scott on it, and we're good. Any about that process at all? It's pretty simple. More than one bid. They've all been vetted through the RFP process, so it's okay for you just to select one. We did that because a lot of our counties already have a relationship with one of these that are doing work for them now, so that's who they want to continue to do business with. So that's the reason we did this. You're just one, it'll be
So, some counties are doing their own work. If you have a shop that's capable of doing that, that's great. So some counties have the capability, we just don't have the funds. But then the project, like this, we just, other things going on, we don't have the time to take it on now. So it's not a question of capability, it's just more capacity. We have other things going on, that's okay. So, just because we're a remediation vendor doesn't mean, well, this is something we can't just don't have the time to do it. That's an option. Are using the vendor, as Scott said, that's their option. They would have in-house GIS staff. They work with a service provider here to do that work. If you do work, their funds aren't available to support that. So if you work on your own time, you can go to the council grant funds there. Or there's another company, there's nothing on this list that you work with and you want to have them remediate your data, that's fine too. But if you want funds from the people, it has to be money. Scott's the guy to answer questions on that. Have any more detailed questions? That's right. And then submitted, as Scott said, quality assurance is sort of gap analysis. Before you fix your data, you submit it back to AOS, and they run through a similar set of procedures to make sure that what needed to be fixed was actually fixed to meet our statewide data. Excel, lots of words on the screen there. I won't read it word for word. We have a really solid group of people that is really putting together standards, working with companies on RFPs. We meet with AS on a weekly basis and get their staff report on how things are progressing, projects that need to see. We developed a statewide imagery RFP, which I'll talk about here in a minute. So things that anything that the GIS support for the Next Gen 911 initiative is filtered down to the GIS subcommittee. Those issues we take on with this. So we have the technical committee. So there's several committees within the 911, Next Gen 911 Council. I think we're technically a committee, subcommittee of the technical committee, so we're down there in a few different structures. So this is other names. So we have KDOT and myself and Eileen Battles are from our representation comes from local government. Local here is at the local jurisdiction, so we want a good representation across the state and across the government. So again, we're working with selected months. We're working now on developing and recommending the aggregation and maintenance strategy. So as this work is going on, the gap analysis, and now we've begun the data remediation region 1, with all this data comes together, and eventually statewide data warehouse, a master repository, and that master repository is what runs on system. So how to aggregate it in a statewide base, how to update it, regularly posted from each piece that system, however the data is maintained, if it's the department, the operations department, whatever it is. So it is, how are those posted in, how are those queued ongoing, what our process would be. The step we're going through right now is done. It's a huge first step, but it's a first step in sort of ongoing maintenance process that's just the next kind of big piece that our subcommittee is working on. We've worked on several things, but once we get to January, we're statewide MGRC, the data model, and now the aggregation strategy. Another related to that is the 911 Council has a governance committee. We have a spot in there as far as GIS. So we're on policies and rules that relate to GIS. So things like MOUs, data sharing agreements, change management policies, all these things that affect the operational side of GIS, not just the technical side. Policies and procedures all need to be documented, driven based on the use of the data. If we were just a lane from app and posting that out for anybody to get, we probably just the data and the metadata and say, here, come get it. The use of this data is much different, so we're working with governance committees to trying to find those policies here that make sense to help. Oh, trying to give you a call. Okay. Can you still hear us? Okay, thank you. One last item to wrap up on is I mentioned a couple times our statewide imagery RFP. Specific dates when it's posted and closed, but we're in the contract award stage now. So we're going to have that contract closed here in a couple of weeks. I can't divulge the name of the vendor because of state procurement rules, and we have to sign on to deliver agreements and all that jazz. But for award stage now, we hope to have that wrapped up in a couple of weeks. And with that, can be our timeline for imagery that will support the data remediation process. We're in Region 1 now, moving into Region 2, and so that sort of goes Region 5, 6, around 8. Essentially providing imagery that more or less now. So we feel we'll have contracts with the vendor that will provide imagery statewide, 1 foot imagery along the line for the data remediation project. Can't say really anything more than those contracts, but it's a step for us specifically with work on this project, and then we've heard several times from our data remediation vendors about wanting the imagery, move that along as fast as good, but we should have that. And once we have that contract written, we'll be getting the announcement about how to access So, basically, state agency, county government, local fiction, everyone except for public. Simply the license that law act. Geotip and Mr. Sid file. So should be, enough format and web format for both the data remediation phase and also other uses of state level. Hopefully soon, and that then will be supported out via a variety of lists for how to access the data. If you want to access, how to go about doing that, and if you need to get a hard copy of the data, how to make that request. I don't believe so. We have talked about the potential to build this program down the road, but that's outside of the scope of this RFP. Once we get this done, then we'll take the next step, the other opportunities like that. That was that also. You look to publish stuff that yeah. I mean, it's a life data like to do the council. Yeah. Yeah, if there's someone doing work on behalf of your but it does like for anyone that is in a public, but more or less.
The gap analysis, the QA, I don't have all of the details yet from the state and how exactly we're going to QA. That'll work. So,
Assuming, Scott, that we're sort of talking about it, because we don't finalize documents yet, you just finished with you guys. Okay.
okay. So, anytime you will. How's that?
You look forward to it more.
I was horrified. For those of you who are on the phone, I do have a handout that talks about the gap analysis report. I will send that out to you along with a copy of the presentations from so that you have a copy of those. County, I'm going to apologize here at the beginning because I'm going to talk a little bit in specifics about Region 5, but you guys have your gap analysis report. This will kind of be a refresher for you. So, like Tim showed earlier, mine is a little bit different. At the beginning, Miami County was in Region 6, but because they're a part of the MARC region, we moved them into 5. So that's really the only change. So we're talking 21 down on the map. So, we have received GIS data from Potawatomi County. They were having problems getting emails. I sent them numerous emails. I had Eileen send them an email. They didn't receive any of those. So yesterday we finally worked out the problems. They are now receiving emails. They know that we need their data and they'll be providing it shortly. What a mess. Asking for data for counties for Canada, Washington, Johnson, and Miami. Does that match your list? Okay. Miami kind of slipped through on us because we moved it, and we didn't remind us that we moved it, so we're working on that. All the rest of the CAMA data has been received. We have been processing data since with Stephen last month sometime. So we have sent the 17 CAMAs that we have. We have 10 of the 21 MSAGs. We have 16 of the 21 PNs, and then 17 of the 21 data. Instead of 21, we're in the gas analysis. Originally weren't part of this process, but we decided we were going to include them. Actually, a couple of people, Fort Riley was supposed to be here, and I'm not seeing them, so we'll have to bring them up to date. So, started the gas analysis reforms. I think we have 5 counties that we can start on, and so we're complete on that. Actually, just started on the day before yesterday, or yesterday, maybe it was yesterday that we started those. All of the reports will be complete 3rd of September and sent to Scott, and then Scott will send them on to you. I don't need earlier. We seem to be right on target with all our dates, so I wouldn't expect them earlier than September 3rd. There's a possibility that we can get those done and Randall before the 3rd of September. So, where we're at in the process, I'm going to talk about what we're going to do in the gas analysis report, but before, if anybody has questions on the process, we're at in the process. Nope. Okay. Quiet. Good morning. So, let's talk about specific things we're looking at for the gas analysis report. In 2 and 3, the reports look slightly different because we actually went back and did some more work on MSAGs after the street address guide. So, your guys' report is going to look a little bit different. And before, those of you who are in the room, when you get read before, this is what the new report is going to look like. So instead of 2 set spreadsheets, you're getting 1 combined spreadsheet. So just so that you're aware. So we need like duplicate features. Are there multiple items in the same space and attribute information? So usually when we're doing this work where we take a copy of something and we paste it and it's right on top of the other one, but then we forget to move it or we forget to make changes to our data. So that happens from time to time. This feature is really pretty good and there's duplicate features. We also have areas where the boundaries don't align together with each other. We've got 2 boundaries that overlap one another. So we look at those and then we look at the opposite. We look at the gap. So are there places where there's supposed to be something but there isn't anything? Necessary, right? If you have something where you have something in the middle of it or something part of it, those are there shouldn't be any gaps. You see here the county and the distance boundaries are really good, but the streets weren't snapped together, and so you have streets that all of a sudden on the it looks like and it starts back up where actually there's roads in the street. So we look at those items. We have our overhang. We have a set, so we kind of move those sideways. What we're really looking for is where somebody didn't get a connection to the road, so it's like a couple meters over the top of it. So we're not looking at the long driveway, right? Because I know that the country driveway is half a mile long, drives in the road, right? But it's no overhang that specifically we're looking for. Consistency is when you would look at it, they're all flowing the same direction, and then all of a sudden something flips. Your split, so you go from low to high, all of a sudden you go from high to low, and there are some of those that occur across the state. We're also looking at splits at intersections. This is new. It was typically what we had done before looking at the NENA standards. This is your roads need to be split, and curious about this. So your roads need to be split at cities where your EMS district is different, where your fire district is different. Any place where there's something different, your roads need to be split. That's not something that we've done up to this point. So with the flow, the zip code stays the same, or the state stays the same, we haven't put the splits in there. ESNs, you can see this one how applicable. That's because they didn't have an ESN boundary. If we have a boundary, we cannot tell you if your ESNs are correct. So we also cannot tell you if your ESNs are correct or they're all wrong if you have the boundary but you haven't populated your ESN. So those are things that we look at there. We also look at how the ESN, the emergency service boundary, aligns to the rest of the boundaries. How it aligns to EMS, how it aligns to fire, how it aligns to law enforcement, or type of response boundary that you may have. And a lot of times what we find from just the local jurisdictions across the state, the police department has changed their boundaries, but nobody has told anybody to the ESN boundary didn't get changed to the fire vaccine. So just maintenance type of issues have kind of been elusive over the past. Road consistencies, we know literally there are some of these that are correct. Because you have people who said, my section of the road named something else, and they've gone to the county or the city and they see that name. But what we're seeing is when you have like a highway name, you have a segment that has a highway name, this segment has the county road name, this segment has highway name. So you have these four. May or may not be correct. It's just something that somebody needs to look at. So all that we point out may not be error, and Sherry's going to tell you about exceptions, so that you can get around that. Different things when it comes to the inside, we're looking at roads that have no matching inside. We're looking at inside that have no matching roads, interline segments, and we're looking at the inside ranges versus the street ranges. Details I'm not talking about the inside street address guide. So it will keep those road segments. And it's helping companies. And in the state of Oregon. Looking at how well your telephone number listing geocodes to your address point. Okay. So you should at least give you notices less than 90%, 90%, and then 100%. So we tell you, this one has 16, they have about 60% of their teams don't have address point. Tell you what NENA GIS data layers you are missing. There are two that the state has said. We want the state of Kansas, unless one of the big metropolis room, to disagree, but there is no municipal division boundaries, and there is no sub. You we actually received some of so I believe Senate boundaries because they have subdivisions, so they said to us. So we looked at it. So that's one system, but we didn't look at it. So do you have boroughs or districts, or what do you have in Washington County that you made up? Oh, too funny. Guys, get to look at those. Voting words. We could just take New Orleans and put it down as Washington County, right? We really want to do that. the need of standards. One thing to keep in mind, when we started this, and when did we start this? We started January. When we started in January, the subcommittee hadn't really formed yet, and the subcommittee formed, they changed some of the stuff in the fields and the standards we're going to have to look at for QA. So when you get this report, there are fields that the state says are required that we didn't even know about when we started this. And instead of changing the process in the middle, we just kept going ahead with the standards that we have. So you're seeing some things when you hear about the standards, the state said you're going to have these as required, but you're not going to see them in the report that we give you because that wasn't originally what we were to look at. Like, for instance, the county boundary has 2 no-mean fields. That's not a bad thing. You can have as many fields in your data as you want. For some reason, you may know the number of dogs that are in the county, or you want to know whatever the number of parks, whatever those fields are, you have as many non-mean fields as you want. What you have are required fields from either MENA or the state. So that's what you're going to want to look at, not the non-MENA fields. So an idea how your fields actually align. We have information so we provide field type and your field length. Okay. So we are notorious for making everything a string in the GIS world when it needs to be a number. So you see that you have text or a string and it needs to be numeric. An integer, large integer, small integer, etc. Code your point district center file. You can see it really is the same. It's no match, less than 90 to 99, and then 100. And you see that, 75% of the points in this direction actually geocoded to their road. Some of the problems that we have with geocodes are sometimes we have elements, sometimes we don't, that we need to geocode. So we all know that the state of Kansas, and we all know that the thing. Well, sometimes because we know our jurisdiction so well, we have to put the information in needed for geocoding. A lot is those kind of things, or we're missing an avenue, or we're missing a road, etc. Look at the TAMA record, and this is one thing that when we originally started, we weren't looking at TAMA, but then Ken and well said, hey, what if we look at TAMA to see maybe how many points are missing? And this was really specifically designed to assist the remediation vendors, because address points are required for TAMs and they're optional for MENA. So this gives them an idea of how many address points are we looking at to be added to the data. When you code the TAMA, there's one you have all of your TAM records that have zeros for their addresses, so 000 South Ratner Road. They're not geocoded. They are not included in the number, or excluded for those. Does that make sense? Other than a huge queue of addresses that need to be geocoded or replaced, they don't see.
So I'd like to make a comment on that one for addresses. We talked to some of the people on the MENA committee to get their standards. They're not requiring address points. They don't think enough people have. I think it will be an undue fiscal burden, but they're not requiring. Because we have other going on local jurisdictions, get the remediation centers to be for them. Be included required because it's a better way to do. They have a similar project in MENA, and here there were funds available for those requirements. They were required.
Yeah, but we've had one jurisdiction without address points. We have a county in Regis County. We've had one jurisdiction without address player. So, and we have. We're looking at what kind of multi-address structure formats we have, or a single point, and this is basically for for things like apartment complexes, duplexes, those kind of things where multiple people, there's multiple homes in one building. And so you can see this one just has a single point. Sometimes we stack points, so all the points are right on top of one another. Sometimes you actually see that they have some kind of structured point. Sedgwick County, for instance, will put their diagonal over their apartment complexes. So we're just seeing a whole variety of ways people place those multi-structures. Looking at standards when it comes to SPS road abbreviations, Avenue Road, etc. We see some interesting abbreviations of roads. We didn't know what it was supposed to be. It was so strange. Post directional, so that's the N for north, W for etc. So we're looking at those. We also looked at the projection of all of the layers, and for the most part, the entire state is using planes either north or south, but we do have some jurisdictions who are using UPM. Than anything else. And then we'll look at some metadata. Now, something that we're going to actually look in more detail with the quality assurance audit. So questions on the gap analysis report. You got, and those on the phone, the handout that you will get explains exactly what we looked at each one of these items. And the item on the handout is tab name, okay? Now, the only thing is I did not make the modifications to the you're seeing. There isn't a single tab for inside synchronization errors anymore. There's 3 sub-tabs, and they are on that handout that you got. Any questions? I said it earlier. Originally, when we were a contract, we only had to do 25%. It was coming from the state, sitting on the council, that doing 5% was the wrong thing to do. So we looked at reading to see in the hours that we told the state this project, can we do 100%? And we do 100% within the time that we told them it would take. So we have done 100% of this point. You throw this in kind of tailspin because your multi-structure address points are all over you have so many of them. We may look at every single one of yours because you have so many of them. I think one of our system teachers spent the entire day and only got like 100 of them. So those who are going to do your remediation, if you guys are going to do it or have fun. It's a you're looking. Well, people are complaining about doing roads and you don't get to do real GIS work, but I think you figured out that you're going to have real GIS work to do. Audit. I guess what I will start off with is this, and I'll let Sherry talk a little bit. It's going to be different than our gap analysis because the state did change the standards on us. And we told the state that we will try to get the audit done within 5 business days. The caveat with that, the 2025 jurisdiction data, there's no possible way we can get through those 5 days. So we won't do it. We'll make sure that we do the reasons in the order that they come. Okay? But I only have 1 other slide, but I don't know what we're doing yet. So I'll just get you really quickly. Because we've had a bit of discussion about the fact that they are doing tests and they're producing a report that all of the that do not fit guidelines. But it's really sufficient to tell is it adequate to standard or is it not? Because everyone of us, for every jurisdiction that's here, we've got it's going to be different. Any standard somebody could just set down line by line. It's true. So asking AOS to produce a report and then asking the local jurisdiction for mediation center to make that report 100% of that involved it's not a requirement. So the process, we
kind of talk through it, we worked through how it's going to come out. We're going to have an official document about it that's available for people to review. It's not going to be quite ready yet. Basically, it will go like this. Just like the GIS report, AOS will produce the audit report and submit it to Scott and Randall for review. It will come to a group that we are calling the GIS review panel. Okay. But which is the members of our subcommittee that look at the report. Well, look, if it looks like, for example, and I hope you'll understand, if there are quite a few address points that do not properly geocode on center line, maybe you can actually look at your data and see, is that because this county has a city that is addressing things in the middle of fields and they're not going to reasonably have a center line for it? Or is it legitimately with center lines for you? We're going to it's subjective stuff. It isn't necessarily something you can come up with 100% report. Then the panel to Scott and Randall, acceptance or rejection. If they you're done. The data vendors are going to get their money, everything's good. Rejection, that we're going by item what needs to happen in order to get accepted, particularly the remediation vendors that everybody is dealing with. The review will be telling you exactly what you need to do pass on the second go around if there's a problem. That's our hope. If it's something like you don't have half of the center line, and that will tell you all the feature missing, but you'll get the point. And you'll go back, review the region, fix those items that have been identified, and submit the data again. So that's it. Again, it will go back to the panel, and until the panel accepts the data as finished, it's not done through the process. But like I said, this requires knowledgeable GIS people to take a look at, because every one of us has things in our county, in our jurisdiction, they're not standard. We have other things that need to have in their standard that we kind of went, you know what? This isn't stuff. I'm going to drop this. We have a few things that we actually just never think being either comfortable requiring anyone, or because they felt it was outside the scope of what they were doing, but we wanted to get direction here. So with all rolling together, QA simply cannot be a fail. You got an A, you got a B kind of thing. Anybody have any questions about that?
So you hallucinate AOS.
Don't forget it to us in 5 days.
How long?
2 is 4, 3.
We're actually going like this, by the way.
They got the number, Sherry. I don't care what you say. Our has 2 days to review it, assuming that it's not coming in on Friday afternoon. But our panel 2 days to review it, I know, and then we did Scott and Randall and to you. So Mike, I think it's 8 to 9 days. Sure. Yeah. It should be 8 days later. Go with that. Yeah. So, third question. Cool. Don't be surprised whether you're in your own remediation or whether your remediation is better. You should be on panel. Because we may be looking at a report and go, hey, we need some help with this. We don't understand what we're looking at. Why does it look this way? And you go, never mind, do it. Cool. And you go, hey, here's this legitimate reason. We'll factor that into our report. So. No. You did good.
Here's what we were going to look at OS, just so you have the idea. Issues with how to do a database format. Now with that, we may receive some of these in shapefile format. In that case, we're going to see how well it loads your database, because field honestly should be your file. We're going to look for geometry errors, topology errors, duplicates, overhang, orphans. We talked about some of these things. There are legitimate orphans out there. I think, Sherry, you have some in Vincent County. I know there are other counties that have those. Your boundaries align, you know, how they fit inside your administrative or your social boundary. Where what's an intersection, road regionality, road name, you code your roads again, multi-structures. We're going to look, because guidance says that the points are supposed to be on structures, so we're going to take a look at how they work or how well they align with structures. We'll look at new road segments, okay? Because the is going to talk about it. The guidance says how you have new road segments in, but because it's going to be such a great burden, they had to go back and fix all of the road segments. We're going to try our best to look at new road segments, depending on how they use the data in the data. We're going to look at the mandatory fields, and at this point, what we can do is or not. If there is no domain, I can't tell you that the value is correct. I can say to the council and to the committee, they have value in there, but I can't tell you if it's correct or not. Mandatory fields that don't have a domain, which basically on GIS people with a list of items there are mandatory fields that have the domain. To ensure that domains are used correctly, one of the issues with domains is they're in the database format, but they're not something you can do in a shape format, and so you're going to have to, if you're doing your compile, you're going to have to ensure that you have typed things correct. Don't look at validation. We're going to look at road alias ID to the road ID so that you have something to join your alias table to the road list. We're going to look at ESN values. We will look at projection, and we will look something in the mandatory field is your data. And that we cannot tell you would be correct or not. Only you, whoever it is going to know if it's correct. Okay? And we have a checklist that we will go on in order to do this. We've been talking or Sherry to ensure that we have everything correct. So basically, I think it's a 10-page class. So 20 pieces, something that are of things that we're going to look at specifically. What, you know, if it's a domain, what domain is it that we're going to look at? What data layer is it? Yes. Question. That's fine. Going to quality assure, quality audit the points on the structure. And I will answer that, Sherry.
Talking about how do we get a valid list of this? This is a tough question because, you know, we often look around at residences or what we know in our jurisdictions, especially those smaller jurisdictions where the apartment buildings are. But trying to identify which ones actually have individually addressed units, and there some GIS cannot do. And we've been trying to figure out as a committee how are we going to do? How are we even going to look at you and go, hey, multiple points, this one probably doesn't. And the first thing we have is CAMA data, because the appraiser does collect that kind of information, but it's not necessarily 100% accurate. Just places to live inside of either two address units inside that building, so that it will give us a whole bunch of things that want to be up and down for no reason. So we ran across something. One of Ken's staff came up with an idea that has looked at relevant Dickinson County, and we're going to be forwarding the information on Jessica. It's going to be helpful for her. She's just hearing about it. So, and this is the U.S. Postal Service has a database of addresses that deliver mail to, obviously. And what Ken's staff was able to do is cut out a list of those that include secondary address, lot, building, apartment, anything along that line. And if the U.S. Postal Service has a valid address that has an apartment or lot or something like that attached to it, they have records for it in the state. for us at Dickinson County as a way to go through and go, okay, where should we have these multiple points? Because Jessica's already looked at our data, or Stephen's already looked at our data, we have 0 of them. We have 1.1 buildings. We haven't apartments at all. So we have to figure out a good source for this, and I think this is a good source probably statewide. Is it 100% perfect? No, but it's certainly, I think, the best thing that we can get our hands on. So we're going to cut a copy of it over to AOS so that they have it, and then they can check along those addresses and see what's there. This is a big thing. It's not going to be something, well, you missed one. Maybe going back. There's still a lot of local research that has to be done. This is not 100% house sale. But we have to get the hand to you. Something we can remediation that they're in the data store if there is some sort of issue that they can get. Right. They're just going to do a visual check, I think, or if it's on the structure.
Yeah, we're just going to randomly pick a set of points to see if they're on the structure. We do know of addresses that have structure, right? A vacant lot of address but no structure. So we'll just randomly pick. So we haven't quite decided how many, and I think it'll probably be a percentage because we have one jurisdiction to 5,000 address points, and how many address points do you guys have in the county? Yeah, you have the number that we vote so no, it's not 4,000, but you do have a lot. So I think a huge number of structures. I mean, they just a long tedious process with them. QA audit or gap analysis because I believe I'm going. But we've been much on time, so I can't imagine that this will be much before the 3rd of September.
Questions on chat?
Oh. So we've got to figure out how to get there, so. Okay, zip plus 4 be required on the addresses. Share no.
It's a field you can fill out. The zip itself is the only one that's required by NINA or by our.
Those of you on the phone, more about what's required and what's not required, but I think Mark next, is that correct? Mark is going to bless us with learning more about the impact.
Where did it go? There's really polygons.
So those of you on the phone, the question is, where do you get the zip code information from?
And the reason why I'm saying that is because most problems negotiate. Those boundaries are no good.
The codes are fuzzy. Yeah. And that's the reality. What we did to our data, there did not find our road that was lost and protect our town and going forward. Then again, we have one road where we have an address now, and an address.
Mark, you're
Well, I guess not. Okay, database. The Master Street addressing guide, what we need to do to clean make next 911 work. Anybody in the room, MSAC coordinator for their jurisdiction? Good. I really don't want, but it can be a lot of fun. Okay. Actually, the backbone is 911. addressing guide, in a regular format, spreadsheet. It is linked by the phone company. Thank you. Right. Right. So, it lists all valid streets within a direction from the low address to the high address. What's unique about tag is you can either use your actual ranges of valid addresses or you can use hypothetical ranges. Both are correct and usable depending on the situation. And this is database verification. When a customer calls a phone company and says, I'm moving to 123 Main Street, the phone company that address against the AMSAC, make sure it's valid. If they'll kick it back out, say, sorry customer, we can't provide you with phone service, you need to get with the 911 addressing coordinator, the city jurisdiction to find out what this address is, why it's not in a database. For the MSAC resides with the agency having jurisdiction, the city or the county. Has designated MSAC coordinator in their jurisdiction, whether they know it or not. Some say the city clerk, could be somebody in the planning department, could be somebody in law enforcement, fire department, any city departments eligible. Chris, who's doing your guys' C6? Right. At one time, County Ames or County Master Department where I'm from, they were responsible for unincorporated Johnson County. I'm getting the city on the Missouri side of the Mark region. Landscape technician was in charge of that. Now, one goal is for me to figure it out. I don't know how it is here in Jackson County. Do you take care of the entire county?
As far as maintaining the address,
I started MSAC work about 13, 14 years ago. Each of our incorporated cities plus the unincorporated county has a designated MSAC coordinator. Eventually turned that all over to our 911 center. So now every incorporated city, the county, plus the unincorporated county. Also just Miami County. And as part of our contract for dispatching Miami County EMS, we also took over Major MSAC. So our region of the phone companies that I haven't tried to figure out which of 25 people to call, they can make one phone call and get things fixed or figure the issue. In the database, all carriers, their own MSAC, and AT&T, who for the majority, 75% of the state is responsible for providing that service. So, AT&T is the provider up here, or Sprint still. Yeah, I remember United. So when a new street's created here in Jackson County, it's up on Sprint, and then they own the AT&T. So when you dial 911 from that phone, 911 from here, only travels to St. Louis. Okay, let's see, to the 911 center. 911 record travels back to the sheriff's office, where the data from the customer comes up on the 911 call taker screen. And it takes a second or two to accomplish. And internal databases for the directory, billing services, the database does not match up, and we synchronize as much as possible. But all the folders have to fit with the valid MSAC. All 911 goes to the right place. I'm sure about this more, but there are existing standards out there that we use for the 911 database. We use the NEAR street types and directionals, and we also use the service standard. A good example is, we'll get into what is. Street here in Jackson County. The one day listed as G Street because the database was created 35 years ago. A lot of times the phone companies did not put in the street type for street. They left it blank. And if it was blank, street. Whether there is or not, it always meant to be named. Sometimes the 911 database will see terrorist listed as TERR, for the NIT and post office standard is TER. Avenue, the one that pops up every now and then, the phone radio is AV instead of AVE for the correct abbreviation. Tag, I don't like signs, so a Jackson County map. Just say that map. Okay. That's why you're waiting so.
Wow.
Oh. So we'll just assume that Jackson County is just getting 911 service, even though you guys have been there for 30. 21. This from the get-go. Okay, there's two questions. Okay, yeah. Jackson County Sheriff's Office and the Tribal Nation. So, in the traffic area, the Tribal Police Department, the Tribal 911 Center handle fire, medical, and law enforcement issues. They're kind of house picture. So the Jackson County Sheriff's Office, they're responsible for dispatching the sheriff, all the volunteer departments, plus Jackson County EMS. So, you know everything on Jackson County. However, because of city jurisdiction, anywhere where you see a city name, those are separate and unique NSEC and an ESN list. And further, we have stuff outside the city for rural fire departments for covering responses to that location. So, it's probably about 15 Jackson County. Okay.
Yeah, and we can part-time work, we can't allow. Oh, we were, oh my God. So we were on,
I know what you meant.
as a default, the sheriff's office.
Right.
They're all duty.
Right. So the city of Floyd, for instance, with its own ESN number, say it's ESN 101. So Floyd might call 911, show up the sheriff's caller's address, and then show the law enforcement jurisdiction of Floyd PD, the sheriff department jurisdiction of the Floyd Fire Department, and show EMS jurisdiction of Jackson County EMS. Now, if it's out in the rural coverage area around the city, we'll just say that's ESN 102. Law enforcement jurisdiction is Jackson County Sheriff's Department, and the department is the rural fire department. That's the one of the
Real hard.
yeah, and then Jackson County EMS, and that's how we dial 911 knows what center to go to, what best jurisdiction to call. Oh, okay. Hi. So, that's allowed. Sherry and Dickinson County has a support line for a couple of rescue squads. They carry tools, and they're the only two departments in the county that have them divided a fourth way to show the rescue jurisdiction for the heavy rescue.
And first responders, they have responders in some areas you go first responders in the other areas.
You can they can actually go 4 lines only.
I think we're all like that.
Yeah, that's all they have available. So if you do have especially rescue folks in your team that cover a large enough, yeah, you can actually have those in also. That's a creepy insect.
Grab it.
Simple insect. type. You see North First Street Court? That is actually part of the street name. You have West 87th Street, and if you thought it'd be fun to make the name a little bit fancier, they renamed it West 87th Street Park. So the street type actually became a part of the street name when they added Parkway as the street type. So it the MSAC also figured that way in the center line file, the address from data set and all that. So you have some of the actual ranges come up to be hypothetical. That the urban areas, I found the actual ranges from the top point of that particular street, and in Johnson County, I still run the hypothetical high. I don't know out in rural areas, but I think the hotter boat. Phone company knows that both sides of the street have valid address ranges, maybe not. One side. What that does is prevent errors. If somebody tries to address when the street doesn't have any odd address, it's not right. You have to figure out what's going on. That gives you a name. So the community name of your city, of your county, of your township, with most of those names. Many that do have those.
Unfortunately, AT&T, of course, that's how they built the MSAC. So if you get participation in the building of your MSAC, Johnson County had a great deal of participation, but it was like it didn't do that. We did ours about 20 years as well. And we had no input in how they did it. And if the local jurisdictions had no or little input, they did post to have an actual. Yeah, so it'd be awesome for it to do something else. Have like a whole local community, but your exchange is with right now, which is another little company. Our really tough. There's 19 people, so small.
Our problem with the post office, especially the rural stations, that masters get the mobile bill and they swap. They change routes quite a bit to kind of try to maximize on their numbers, but they never bothered anybody up in Kansas City at the regional addressing office. They just said, keep getting stories about that, trying to validate. Should I set the number? GSM 3, not sure about. Have to look at their complete to figure it out. And then the telephone exchange, companies usually have a 3 or 4 alpha character exchange abbreviation because it's these. So DLS is for Blue Springs, and PR is for Green Valley. That the central office of Green Valley covers Eastern Springs. And the maps for the exchanges don't cover any political, geographic, all of that of the exchanges in the Mark region, and it's a mess. Is there a map on the side that shows all central office members in the state? Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Yeah, so those okay. And he goes up when you call 911. Call paper. We'll have a custom name. We'll have the phone number that they made the call. And who the telephone provider is. So we get a next call. So if you want to connect with the phone carrier, there's probably make contact with them. EMC having jurisdictions, the Missouri PD, law enforcement, dispatch, their own PSAP to answer the initial calls, fire and EMS, the transfer on their dispatch, and fire, Kansas City EMS, on the security assessment, 15. So here's partial master listing of in the Mark region. the map of Mark region showing most of the metro. Chris County, you're in KCK, BSF 5, doesn't matter where you're at, KCK. He has cities, actually, three cities in this county. He's got Colorado Springs, BSF 100, City of Midland, BSF 102. Howard City, Kansas Police and Fire, where dispatch. Right here, you'll see a 121 and a 129. That's the city of Lake Superior. Their city limits exist in both counties. Cities exist each side of the county line. So because of that, you have to have two BSN assigned to it. Even though folks live on the line, like this side, they dial 911, they get the county sheriff. In Johnson County, BSNs are assigned city by city. That's how we chose to do it. Unincorporated Johnson County is one giant MSAG, covers about 250 square miles. For the staff jurisdiction, and then the secondary PSAP is only for fire EMS dispatch. So we don't see what fire stations to go, what officers to go, just allow them much better function. Like City of Mission Hills, they contract with Surrey Village PD. So when someone else 911 for Mission Hills, it doesn't say Mission Hills PD on it. It's Springfield. Changes. Addresses. We constructed a little part thing on my desk again. It's going to set the address point database that one part takes care of. Then I need to update it, and I need to update the 911 database. So, I'll get into the GIS layer, find out what my ranges are. Then those the Mid-American Regional Council of the safety. So if I got this morning, they'd be valid in the 911 database. Change names. City of Hawaii to rename West Bush Street all the way downtown, all the way to the highway. They will name State Street today, on the Cherry Way. Valid address to the MSAG and submit the change to AT&T so they can update their record. Now, one difficult to do is coordinate that change. One, your GIS is updated, any point data set your CAD, maps updated before you pull the trigger. That's sometimes be easier said than done. Using street ranges, we'll say this street Terrace, and halfway between here and downtown. So you want to click that space instead of going from 100 west to 899 west being valid. You want to cut it off. You can start at stop points. So less chance of errors that going. Annexation. That's three sections in Johnson County. One is different school apart. All laid up. So we had to line with pulling. Boundaries, fire department response areas, 911 MSAG reports, that takes a lot of work. What's nice about having one person doing it, advice between the city, county, or anything. We had some things involved on the county goal target. The annexation took place. The MSAG changed automatically. Law enforcement jurisdiction changed automatically. Our jurisdiction, they say, still the responsibility of all the county road fire districts, so it's CPAT, the city of Wilmington. So right now, it's both departments respond, but the DSN number stays the same, it's still from us. Emergency service response areas, like to do here in Jackson County, fire department providers, coverage area changes, and that affects that. And the good news, we have access to the you don't have any, website, where you can log in, have access to your data, pick up things needed, no single update, just a handful of updates. We use spreadsheet format. Full Park a couple years ago, annexed about 4 miles of room. Do any other way. Hey, yeah. Mid-America Regional Council, they maintain a map of Memphis region that goes up on level 1 3 map, cell phone block, and other Mexican also. And Jefferson County and updates what data sets, including Miami County. They verify their map and send me a weekly basis what's falling out or what doesn't look right to them. So up here, this is West 23rd Street east of K7 in northern Jefferson County. County's color decision on 8 City of Bonner Springs. So what is that, hey, we've got intersect discrepancy, so it is at 115 that's showing me whatever GIS at 102 Bonner Springs. So for the center line, what we had to do, we kept here and here, there's ranges for that, those segments, resubmitted to the MSAC. MSAC was good. Another thing that we find really funny, and cities do this all the time, they don't want to add some parcels, they take the road or the right of way. So they'll add a parcel, leave the right of way, and the other person's jurisdiction. That causes some GIS mapping issues every now and then. Jackson County, Missouri, and I have no idea where this is at. There's a house on 83 Road that they have a discrepancy on. They, 3 of those being used on that parcel, but they still have, there was no way to get to it. There's no center line drawn so you could access it. So, well, it's here. There's a type somewhere up here, so center line where you can route to it, see it. Be fixed. I think they probably did. I have that. Another example of an error, Armacon in ranges for the north side forward circle, surrounding range from this intersection, so you had duplicate center ranges. Couple different thoughts to that. I'm putting my dispatcher hat on. Police officers real fast saying I'm out in the 1900 block of West 75th on traffic. So we have an apartment complex in Little Park. Its address is West 91st. Most of the all the way to Baghdad. All we have is 3 center lines, whatever. Addresses in the complexes are in the same ranges. So we have a duplicate center line, and it falls in there. Apartments have the actual, 91st is hypothetical. And the hypothetical in there is just for the traffic stops, so it locates the north arm correctly when they go out on call. So that really is a valid reason to have the range on this. Full company contact for 18 separately. They can, you guys set up an access database. Whoever's doing your MSAC needs access to the database, they'll start to take care of that. Yeah, that's I've got access to the database. The MSAC take it in a nutshell. Any questions? Like I said, like the field, kind of how much longer will that be around? I'm saying years minimum. Fairly new, the part that will be there forever in a tabular format, just as backup. So those still need to be maintained, even though it's what GIS format.
Who's getting a 3D? Oh, that's weird, eh?
Thank you. To talk just really briefly about the MSAG in terms of remediation of the MSAG and Centerline, with my presentation. But I am the rest of the day, so I kind of want to find out from Scott where lunch I get started and then straight away. He has to do this several times, so. The Bruce has listened to it as many times as he has, so it's pretty $100. We'll get started with the in brief on this, and then we can. First of all, does anybody want to take a few minutes to give around and think about the reg before we get talking? Okay, idea. Why don't we just go ahead and do that? Scott by a quarter till and come back in and we'll get started.
Okay, those of you on the phone, we're going to place you on hold for the next 10 minutes, and then we'll get back to you on if our food has arrived here or not.
On hold. Yeah, I'm gonna take a break. Yeah, definitely.
Emergency Number Association. So we're late coming back. We got into a conversation here and tied up. So. Most of them I have met at some point in the past, but just to make sure you know who you're at the moment, my name is Sherry Massey. I'm the GIS coordinator for Dickinson County Committee, and I did quite a bit of work with this data model, mostly just translating what Nina said into a document we could work with. What this NG911 GIS data model is a standard that is going to go into the Kansas NG911 system. It defines the type data, all of the shares, all of the attributes, what has to be there. It was very specifically with two things in mind. First, what we absolutely had to do, which was meet national standards. Not miss on that. Earlier, there are a couple of places where we kind of set some NINA requirements, besides that they're actually requirements NINA themselves are considering removing. We cannot get from NINA, unfortunately. And the second thing we wanted to be sure is that we don't create any undue burden with this team on the local data stewards. Fortunately, several of us who are local data stewards who are on the committee going, I don't think I have the time, energy, capability to do that. It's something that is natural to the workflow of the city, county, and things. So we were able to do discussions, I think, get this down to the point where is it more restrictive than some people would like, but it is the best that we could come up with to balance the needs of the 911 system and the needs of the local jurisdiction. So, to move forward at some point. So, I'm going to, the first thing to do is give a basic N911 primer. The room for this presentation. before, so I okay hearing it again. I worked in 911. My first job at the county was in 911. Started in 1997. I was in as a dispatcher, a trainer, and then eventually the assistant director before I became a GIS person. And I thought I understood very well what Next Gen 911 was because it was in all great information. You know, we've been hearing it at APCA meetings, things like that. Once I got involved in this project, I suddenly came to realize that I did not understand what Next Gen 911 was. So I needed this primer to get on what we were trying to accomplish, and I'm assuming that there are other people who also need this primer. So if I'm something you already know, I apologize, but I think a lot of people are going to be surprised by what they see in it. Start out with the difference between Next 911 and E911. Enhanced 911 is what we have now. A call is 911, and that call is what's called a silver router. That router has access to the M center discussing it. It says, okay, we know what the server address of this phone is. The phone company has to go out and fix it. What does that say about that service address? Where is it? What's it? Gives that information back, and the select router takes the appropriate staff and sends information to the appropriate staff along with the call. Now in a nutshell. Almost identical. Instead of call the selective router, you hit what's called the EZNet data. Return information, plus actually a whole lot more information, and I'll talk about that. And the information to the appropriate PSAC. So instead of using the PSAC to properly route the telephone call, or attach information to the telephone call, this is GIS to route the telephone call and attach appropriate information to it. So what do I have to do next gen? Why is this happening? Well, first, as I told them, so I used the little logo on the bottom. Here's a list of services. The 911 system was originally designed straight for analog phones. It was never to be able to do the things it could do. Just be amazed at the hoops they had to jump through just to get a wireless call to ring at a 911 center, much less transmit coordinates. To be all of the other types of communications that have come through since the system is simple, partially because it's an analog system, partially because that selective router was not designed for anything but a landline call. A wireless call right now, even a cellular call right now that comes to a PSAC is in fact a landline call because it is a call between the tower, the cell phone being operated, and the PSAC. So provided we need to worry about as well. When the 911 center code goes down, you have to have a huge amount of pre-planning done to make sure this is handled appropriately. You need very good equipment. You need somebody what's called your tandem, which is part of the phone system. On your tandem, they can't receive your 911 call. There's a huge planning and operation that has to go in. Next gen, hopefully, you'll be able to end up a virtual PSAP anywhere that you have internet access temporarily, and at pre-planned locations that have to have all this superficial, all this proprietary technology in place. The ability and information sharing. How many people really do work in a 911 center? Work in a 911 center? For those of you that have everything in a 911 center, you can't take out and use anywhere else, right? You can't. If there's a video, you can't read it in normal video viewer. If there's a picture, you can't look at it in normal picture viewer. You can't listen to phone calls on a normal phone or in a program because it's incredibly proprietary. Everybody is unique to one hardware company or one hardware company or another. And it's going to be in common format. It's one environment. An image, it is something like a JPEG or a PNG, a file anybody can use, anybody can read, and that you don't need special software for. Okay. So it's going to be something like a file. What is there about? Next, is an effort, in addition to being able to handle these new types of communications, and being a more reliable system that can be more flexible when things go up and down. But it's also an effort to get the data and the things that 911 needs more mainstream. We don't need to have all of the special and unfortunately incredibly expensive software to use any different. Instead of circuit switch, which it is a phone circuit, it's based like any other internet protocol. To completely replicate the current system, it has to be able to see Enhanced 911 the exact same way that it is now, because that is not owned by the 911 center. It is not owned by the jurisdiction. It's not owned by the state. It's not owned by the federal government. It is owned by the phone company. So the transition is going to happen in stages dependent upon a private industry. So that we can accommodate the NG911 on Friday and the one that doesn't do it until 2055. Okay. It adds to the system. The differences that we have to deal with, and the one we're here to talk about today, is that it's off of GIS instead of this tabular MSAC. It is no longer a local service. It is a service that technically can be regional, meaning county, can be state, can be regional, meaning in 2 states, and some can even be stored nationally. Just like a GIS map that may have layers from your local data as well as layers from some national data set as well as layers that you're getting from service to that, and you actually have pieces that are at different resolutions of where they're being stored. So actually fit into this process? Well, you have a database, a master repository that I talked about earlier. Constantly out information, and I'll explain a little bit about how it happens, to 2 of the 911 framework. One of them, or the location validation function, is called the ECRF, or the emergency call routing function. So here we go. A phone company goes to put in a new phone line at a brand new address. They see if this address is going to fit in an existing MSAC record. That is location validation right now. Fit in an existing MSAC record, right? If it is, then they are going to communicate with the MSAC coordinator locally. Or the phone company just gets and decides to add record to the database because they believe they understand what it ought to look like. In the database, calling that phone will not function properly. So when you go over to NextGen, the slide you have here, the server has an address check. So this isn't really a landline phone, but it could be where they're accepting an application from the customer, where the customer is dictating the existing records just to be sure that they're still good and nothing's changed. So just like they did the MSAC, but this time they'll be sending it to the LVS. The LVS will essentially geocode it, either an address point or a centerline bar or 3 centerline segments. And if that comes back, they only get one, that doesn't hit the segment, and you have an overlap, and it's trying to send it 2 different places. And if it finds out, it'll say, yeah, good, do your thing, or it'll say, there's a problem with the address, and they'll use the address, or they'll have to communicate with the local jurisdiction. The same process, it's just on the GIS database. The GIS database is not the location validation function. They are 2 separate pieces of hardware. It's constantly updating the LVS through a protocol that's actually called the lost protocol. I don't know why you take anything that was supposed to be how to find something and call it a lost protocol, but they did. And it's provisioning through the SIF, or spatial interface function. So if you are looking at any documents or you're looking at articles about it, and you're seeing through the SIF, all that really means is that the GIS database is constantly pushing out to that. when someone 911 for a next-gen call, call in. And if you have ever, in any of these articles or previous presentations, seen a picture of the 911 graphic for what next-gen 911 looks like, that's moving parts that are really confusing to me. Scott and other people that have to sit on multiple committees like this and work extra pieces of hardware. But as it happens in that cloud, it hits the ES. The emergency function is the piece that matters. It is the critical piece of the next-gen 911 system. It is that actually moves the phone call from where the person dialed it to the 911 system. And I did it are really two things. GIS and we don't have to worry about somebody else's job. You have to worry about that GIS data. Call 911, it hits the EZNet, bounces around to a bunch of different computers. The EC tells it which ones to hit on the out, and it goes to the step. So it actually has two separate functions that it will do. The big one is that it will route the call to the right step. That's the one we worry about the most. Second function, right now the information that is attached to a call is called or automatic location information. The name, the address, the EMS, the ESN number, Mark knowing you, and earlier today. The new Alley will have that same information, but it could have all kinds of other information attached to it. That database that you can hit with the GIS data, you can get information in the call for the dispatcher, for you to be able to put the parcel information in there. It could have live results coming back from alarm units as they're going, attached to the 911 call. So as the call comes in, there is motion sensor 3 is going off, motion sensor 4 is going off, that kind of thing on the 911 call, instead of on some completely separate. It's difficult if you haven't ever dispatched to try and coordinate between. Additional call information, a whole variety of things, and NINA has a whole document about how they believe that will work and what they think could be accurate. It's interesting reading if you're into that kind of thing. But bottom line is, it's going to have GIS data together. Attached. So, in 1, the emergency calls will depend on standard GIS, both current and accurate. Data model, software that is out there, and all of the different pieces and parts for various 911 systems. Time ago, begin a working standard of what the GIS data system was going to look like. And they came up with a pretty good standard that is not quite published yet. They've been working on it for a long time, and they're giving the draft standard to people that are built hardware and software and to groups like ours, because they're pretty sure that it is done and finished. They're just bickering over some small pieces. They have a small jurisdiction versus large jurisdiction, northeast versus south. They have some different opinions on how things ought to happen from different states, and they're working that through. We're vendors that are putting together the pieces that will become the next-gen system, the pieces the state of Kansas is putting out RFPs for here shortly, have that standard. Stuff. We cannot I need to do that. I don't do that. It's not unavailable to us. Their stuff will work with these standards. And the contract will continually state that no matter how many changes the standard, our software will modify to update to NINA's current standards. That means what we do in Kansas in all GIS shops and our 911 centers have to comply to that NINA standard. We do not have next work without it. Now, we're very happy with the idea of being told how to do this, but if you're going to get a compatible system that works interoperably across the entire state, or a system that handles via IP the 911 calls, so that we can begin getting things like text messages and picture messages and things like that, you have to do this. That's unfortunate. Where we just had a clue of that, even none of us that are sitting on the committee had a clue it was going to end quite like this until we started doing the documents. So as I stretch and move through it, we do have to meet that MENA standard at a minimum. So started, and we're getting to the point where data is starting to go out to mediation vendors. We looked at each other and went, how are we supposed to tell them to fix this? But at some point, we need to tell them what right looks like. Because right is just passing text, as I spoke earlier. Right is more than MENA dictates. It has that MENA requires their hardware and software vendors to meet. It needs more definition. So we've got going. The doc itself is available both on the DAS website and at the 911 Coordinating Council website. I have the URLs up at the end of the presentation. If you've not ever seen the document, I'll have it, you can go get it. But a few mentions in it as you go through it. It has recommendations. You must or you shall. This is that was either set down by MENA or like the address point thing in our city needed to be recommended or preferred. If it was all like this, right to dictate to people that they do it this way. Somebody is asking us, and a lot of people have, what's the best way to do something? We're going to put our opinion anyway of what the best way is, but it is just a recommendation. And feel free to forward it as you need. There's a term data steward or local data steward, whomever is responsible for maintaining the data locally. It's depending on the control that management has, this could be somebody all the way up to an elected official. In other regions, it could be the GIS person in a corner closet basis. Okay. So different by jurisdiction. Whoever is responsible, whoever is going to be submitting the data for QA on basis, and whoever is going to be making changes to it as you get new rows and things like that. We also have aggregation in the data aggregator. That's because all this data eventually has to fit together in a statewide data set. Who's going to be doing that? We are starting to get an idea of who that will be. We do not have firm answers on it yet. Throughout it, you'll see that term, and it's generic like it is because we didn't talk. So first rules, and one of the ones that hangs up 911 centers right away is that it has to be within what's called your boundary polygon. So that's the other at the county border. At the county in Dickinson County only. I have seen the changes to Saline County roads are in Neighbors County. Even though, because of placement of a couple of sellers, I have to have substantial amounts of Saline County data in my data for my dispatchers. They need to see those roads. They receive 911 calls from outside the county because of how the cell phone towers sit. So, difficult to for some people, but you really need to make the distinction. Necessarily, what your 911 officers are going to look at. It is the for which you hold authority. It's going to be a statewide data set. So you have data all the way around your county. And I for example, maintain several miles in each of our surrounding counties. For submission. You're submitting your stuff. Within the standards, these are dictated by MENA. They don't go anywhere. All of these things, if it's something here alphanumeric, it is a text field always. You cannot do it as a number even if you want to. If it's a date field, and I'm going to show you here in just a minute a little more technically. If it's MENA, that means it's an integer. It has the whole number. And if it's any, that means it's under the decimal. in as a decimal number. Additionally, the attribute is listed as either mandatory, meaning you absolutely must have it filled in, additional, meaning you have it filled in. Probably the best ones that I can think of off the top of my head of conditional attributes is if you have a road segment that does not have directional line. It's 400 roads. Well, 400 roads have a north, south, east, or west. If it did require, then it's conditional. This is optional, which means it's used. It's data that would be a good idea, but it certainly isn't going to be required by the system, and you can leave it off if you like. Still have the field there, populate it into Q, or populate any portion of it that you choose. Those is speed limits. If you have some places in your county agency where you're storing speed limit information and you have a reason to do so and want to keep doing it, you can. You are not required to fill out speed limits on every other segment. You can just handle the parts that matter to you. So I'll show you must be there, and the field be in the same order if possible as the field, or as the fields in the table. That is to ease the way of the aggregator. For some people, it's just not going to be a reasonable requirement, so that's why they should. Use the field names that we recommend. You are welcome to use whatever field names you need to. Your software may require specific field names, or you may have so much going on in your county with the current stuff that you don't want to change those field names, and all that is fine. But if you do that, you have to have metadata. What field data map to be required in the field. You only have to do it one time, but you get in there. So that somebody in your data does not have a question as to which one is the municipality versus the district, or the postal community versus the MSAG community, which field. And it would be difficult for us to tell the difference if you didn't give us a map. You have to have a persistent, unique identifier within your data, not the object ID. Yes. This one can be copied to GIS and like a we have all this available for you to download that will assign unique identifiers. Welcome to, or you're welcome to use whatever form works best for you. The unique identifier, and it cannot change from this submission to the next. It's got to stay on there. Segment can be the same segment one from now, unless you're splitting it or combining it with something else. Domain listed, it represents the only valid value. This is a big issue with NINA, because there are these software providers and hardware providers. These are the only 10 values you're going to get in this position, period. Never going to be spelling, spacing, never going to do anything different from this. So if there is a domain listed, you have to use it. There are a couple of places that's giving people some headache, and I'll point them out to you. Let's talk talking about road center lines. And earlier it was being a little slow, so hopefully we can get this is actually itself, and there are our road center lines. Off the set of screen. Small screen. We will go. There you go. Center lines, and with all of them, they all work the same way. This attribute name. That's the one that we like you to use, that you don't have to. All of the characters or less. So that if in your shop you have to put this in shell format, you will know about changing any of these names. They will be file requirements. Description, what it is, and you have to remember I was talking about alphanumeric, date, number, E for number that has a decimal. If you use the NENA standard, which a couple of people have done, and said, hey, you guys did that wrong. The NENA standard for the date is a date format that software and AutoCAD software will not do. So you guys figure out how to get a date in a format that your software wants to support. We're telling you to use the date format for your software. Use just the date field for art. It is the URN and RDBMS. Or we aggregation, whoever does aggregation will handle converting that into the appropriate format for NENA. This isn't something you do locally, but I've had some people go look at the NENA standard and, well, I did that wrong. You have a fire that says I was going across. We have this is actually a maximum, and I say because we have with the split. If you ever look at their data, they have a requirement. There be an identifier that is something like Dickinson 1, meaning this is Dickinson County segment number 1, Dickinson County segment number 2. What we are asking you to do is to maintain the steward field, which is a NENA requirement, and identifier field, and we'll put them together when we do aggregation. You don't have to be meeting that one. So you're going to kind of play a little bit is the unique identifier in NENA is shorter than the 38 characters we gave everybody. But to that data steward and equal 100. We set the data steward that was much shorter than that 75 characters. Even though that off of what you'll see in NENA, we're still within the guidelines. And if it is why we chose 38 characters, there's our software called a global identifier UID. If anybody's choosing to use those, we wanted to give them the ability to, and they're 38 character font. So that particular number. Airlines, you have all right left you would expect, which counties on the right, municipalities on the left and right. Municipality, but you also have local community, corporate local community. They'll be here. Okay. That community, for those of you that are doing this, that was kind of a tough one for me, figuring out community, because again, like we said earlier, the website is often off of your postal community name. I is not going to be able to check accuracy. If anybody did want to correct my accuracy on that inside community name, they'd be welcome to. If the company corrected it, that would be great. For your data, it may not. Just depends on what your situation is. But based on the street things, the pre-directional, the pre-type, post-type directional, their field in NENA drew away. NENA is a free modifier, and discussions with Mark Berriman from the committee that is working on this with NENA. He said to their own, there was only one place in the whole country that they had run into that had that. So they were at the table telling people we have to have it in standard that you don't have to have it if you don't want to. So we could find available and didn't find any in Kansas, and so we pulled it out because if you put it there, somebody's going to come along and type it. Even if it's intentional, even if they don't mean to. So we tried to get rid of as many of these as we could. The ones that we knew were going to be blank, we took out for you. Neighborhood left, and municipality division right and left are two that you don't see on here. And they were removed for the same reason. We're just going to assume that they're all the way across Kansas unless somebody comes and says, to add, so something like that, Ward 7 of Garden City. The road class, which is the NENA field. Everything in the class was added to the Friendly Neighborhood GIS subcommittee. The updated by. You say the exact date and time it was last updated. We actually put who did it. Did that. If the data aggregator has a problem with one of the edits, they know who to talk to. They know who to talk to. They spot it. We only have one person that it could possibly have been, and that just helps them navigate the phone system. But some agencies, there are quite a few GIS people, or quite a few people touching it, and knowing actually made the change could be really valuable. So that's why it's there. I'm going to talk a little bit about a very easy way to populate that as we get closer to the end. Name is the full together in one field. Here's the stuff on that. They build that out of the rest of it. You either have to have pretty decent or you have a bunch of spaces you didn't mean to have. So we're asking for a label field, but it shouldn't be too hard to populate. In order to make the screen more easily readable by the 9 person, the data aggregator, everybody involved. I'll talk about a little bit in a minute. ES is a field that it is optional. Meaning it will actually be understand they're going to add that same thing. The SNC is when a city has annexed everything north of the road and everything south of the road, but not the road. For a variety of reasons. It seems like they didn't want to pay for the maintenance of the road. It happened in a couple of places. But if you say the ESN on the left side of the segment and the ESN on the right side of the segment are 100, it's understanding that there is an ESN that runs through the middle of it. The ESNC, because it's something that happens on the actual center line, like say a shooting stop, is the ESN. Law enforcement or whatever else. That's why that's there. We sure like it. It's a real idea, but it's one of those things that is too much of a burden to require you. It is going to be a statewide data set. If you have a tornado go through a town in your county or some other major disaster, people are going to be responding to your county from away. One of the places they're going to look for data. If we have those surface types on there, they'll know which roads are traversable by their big heavy fire truck and which ones aren't. This is a really simple surface type. It is gravel and maintenance, I think is the other one. And it's not as granular as a lot of people like to get in describing the surfaces of their roads. But like it's purpose is when I drive fire truck down that road. That's what it's for. We also have fields, whether it's closed or not built. There's no requirement for you to come in here on a regular basis and say, hey, we're closing this road for 6 hours or 2 days while we do maintenance. The field primarily is actually not built, and that is to make sure that people who see road center lines in their data, either address ranges or support addresses that aren't actually on a road, or subdivisions that haven't gone in yet. And actually, this isn't a navigable road. You can't drive on it. Because like that's going to be a really critical issue. So we need to know which roads are really drivable and which ones aren't for the screenplay and for the mandatory. Field is a new field that is considering putting in, and we went ahead and threw it in optionally. What that's for is it's free text for you to type, say, west, eastbound, or inside loop, outside loop, whatever might be appropriate, so that it's screens to the dispatchers eventually and shows this is on the side of I-70. You make that in the road name, and that's cool. That's what direct travel is for. Finally, field LRS key is optional, and it is a key that's going to tie your road data back to KDOT's road data. It will not have to populate that. We're not sure how it's all going to happen yet, but we know that it is KDOT's intention to populate those fields once the data is made. Q isn't that data. When I first reviewed lists, I thought, we're just never going to get by some of this. That it is not everything that I maintain in my data already, and I'm sure your situation is much the same. So that's the road. Like I'll hit that elevation thing in just a moment. What do the roads have to look like? This is where that's the thing. They applied rules because of some of the requirements the data had to fit together to actually wrote out what the roads look like, and that's one of the big things that our committee did. First of all, line has to have all public and private address roads, I should say. If the road needs to be in there, if it is a road and there are addresses on it, it needs to be in there. At every intersection with another road segment, even over underpasses, county, municipal, or emergency service boundary, ESZ or emergency service zone boundary, and I'll explain both of those in a bit. The road name, as North Buckeye goes out of Abilene, it turns into Highway 15, has to break where that happens, even though it's boundary. The surface type if you use it. If you choose surface type, you need to break the segments if they change from soil to grass again. Actually, they need to on the road surface in aerial topography. The actual standard says in the best available orthoimagery. It is to be within 10 feet of the center of that road surface. But it isn't a requirement, and for a lot of us that would be a whole work and a burden on it to make cartography better. It does not affect Next-Gen 911 at all if your road should be curved and square. It doesn't change next-gen routing anyway. Lots to move from low address to high address, and that's because that's how the geocoding works now, how it will work with Next-Gen. So here's on here. This one does not meet the standard. This isn't good enough. It is too far off. You could be crossing jurisdiction boundaries. You could be doing all kinds of things with it. And it's kind of hard to tell in some cases what you're actually trying to draw. Not pretty, but it's the minimum standard. And I love that. This is really actually they can be down. And this is my road center line file. As RSD actually, that's one of the very first things I did in GIS. And I do not know anything about curving or doing anything else. So this is a road center line in our county. Thank you. And it looks like, and this example does not use curves either. It uses extra vertexes. That's how I do it. I was working on it. But recommended standard, that meets the minimum standard. If a grant remediation vendor and they have to add roads to your data, they must do it that way. And we can dictate quality. Yes? Or better. Still might be like that to be higher. Let's document right quick so I can show you. We talked about attributes. We're also going to hit some special cases in geometry because we always have people that ask questions about a few things, and I'm going to show you why we did that elevation thing. In there are a whole bunch of descriptions of how to handle different aspects of this, and I recommend that you go through it if you're considering doing your own remediation or looking at what you're going to have to do after your remediated data comes back. But what I want to really catch is down here. So a lot of people were overpassed as another one. A lot of people were keeping a line segment that went over the other one into the gray. And it's the computer that you can't turn here. If you use the computer, it'll think everywhere that two lines touch, they can turn. We have to break those segments. And we have recorded it because of the difficulty in maintaining a good topology wide aggregated level if you don't break it. That's part of it. But the computer, hey, you cannot turn from I-70 down my little road that drives under it. You can't make a turn and get off I-70 there. It's a limited road. So do it. There is a start and a straight line. This is 5th Avenue overpassing road overpassing 500 Avenue. Sorry about that. Road that stays flush with the ground stays at 0. Starts at 1, overpasses at 1, then this one starts at 1, ends at 0. This way the computer cannot turn from a 1 onto a 0. You can only go from a 1 to another 1. To get to a more complex road, this is Jeep Road overpassing Interstate 70 that you found in westbound lane. Hump over, but you have an actual overpass bridge. Drop. Know that there's zeros, even though Interstate's elevated. This is about the lower road. And down here starts at 0, ends at 1. They say 1 at both ends, and then 1 starts at 1 and ends at 0. Again, the computer model turns appropriately, but still keeping a topology that we can check statewide. Keep good data which we really desperately need to get this all to work. For whom, with public section, we have large organizations here today than normal, so I won't say this is going to be really easy if you're not already doing it. But for the smaller entities, really put everything and then go back and find the few overpasses down into your area and put one to appropriate. I mean, this is a pretty small job. We have state highways, a few. We have Interstate 70 and have one half of a road that is an accident along the railroad, and it didn't take me 15 minutes. It's pretty simple to do. So even if this is new to us and it's a bit alien, it's not tough. You guys do this thing? Yes, you do. Don't mind that? Okay, cool. We'll be so hard to do. Exactly right. I always feel a little pinch of sympathy for Cedric when I talk about this. They're breaking them all. Is that clear? Is that fairly clear? Any questions about that?
No.
What it actually is. Which can be on a limited access road a really big deal because it changes where they're going to access it substantially. So, yeah, cool. Right, I know. That that, for those of you that are curious, we do have the ramp segments, and all of that is outlined. I would hire rooms to sleep, and we have non-GIS people in this meeting, so I don't go really deep into the weeds. But does any questions about road segments that they would address in special situations or anything that they'd like to know what the standard says? Or under please? Okay. In short, the standard security for anybody that's getting funded remediation are that you public private roads and granted remediation will not pay for the addition of things like ways, and we would hold out your data before it's submitted. This is a problem cause with and we cannot have roads that don't have address reading. You know what's happening that has no address reading. All the fields have to be populated if you are going to try to include them in there.
Okay. On that.
Sure.
If you have municipal, such as parkways, community park,
right.
Their residents. They may be locations which your 911 people would want.
Right. Yes. Those are either public roads or private roads for the most part. When I say public and private roads, I'm also speaking from the appraisal side of things. What I mean is roads that have public right of way and roads that don't. And parks do not have public right of way. You're right to park. We do those as zeros on the address ranges, but everything can be filled out just like it was a normal road. You have the name, to have everything else, even though it doesn't seem relevant, like you have to find a zip code, it still has to have. So, but yeah. Grant funded remediation vendors are required to draw new lines within 10 feet of the center line. But other than that, the standard is on the surface of the road in the best available aerial photography, which hopefully with imagery RFPs will have. If you do the aerial photography locally, hopefully with the imagery RFP we'll have some for you. So I said points, but I always forget. I'm going to pop to road alias table. Have multiple names. One address, and a lot of us changed all of our road names. Most of us did in some form or fashion. Sometimes we're still using names. Sometimes the post office you can still use old names for certain addresses. People throw fits. Here is that you have a road alias table to hold those names. What we are requiring is that populated at a minimum with the highway. Earlier, North Buckeye Avenue in Abilene is also Highway 15 that goes through Abilene. I have an entry in the road alias table for every segment of Buckeye that says Highway 15. And if somebody wants to trace Highway 15 all the way through my county, they don't get lost trying to figure that. Now, you to include all road names, all your county numbers. Most of us had road numbers originally. Some of our documents and things like that still refer to them that way. Even some grants that we receive refer to them that way. Sometimes even Google refers to them that way. But you're welcome to put whatever you want in that table. The only thing we're saying you have is a record for every segment that is also the name. This is a NIA totally amended table. We are doing it because after the surveys that we did, everybody's got doesn't have it. We have hopefully to be able to develop it for them. But right now it looks like there's just not that many that don't. All in shape. The structures and sites with assigned street addresses come up. Our county has assigned addresses for every little city, that is out there, do we need them in there? We talk within our committee about saying only uses buildings and places where people congregate like parks. And then no, all these different types of utility structures too. No, we don't care what you do. And it's a pretty heated debate, frankly. It's quite a while. But what I'm with is basically this. All in the signed street address, and by that we mean places like parks, vacant lots that used to have a house that don't anymore, things like that. And what you do is up to you. You can maintain it if you feel you need to. Minimum that need to be in there. One of the two is 1 point per occupancy. This is per apartment of a trailer court where many of us only have 1 point because there's only one street to go. Per of a mall, particularly if you have a convoluted structure for it, every campsite around the lake, so that they qualify. This one can be a toughie. Like I said, I know our data doesn't have it, so we're struggling to get it in there. But it's absolutely important to have. So that is the requirement we came for. The points have to be on the structure or site that they represent. Remember in mind, and I'll give you an example here. Now, this is useful sometimes because in rural areas we address off the driveway, not the house. Because it's fine to address off the house. You guess would be lost, a whole bunch of people do lost. It's not fine. It's not where the point physically sits. And the point needs to physically structure for a couple of reasons. One is this one. This being on the screen here, border running right down here with the house here. You have a way. Let's for a moment ignore the county and imagine this fire district A and fire district B. Down. On the driveway, he is going to get the nod. If you put it out, fire district get the nod. You're just going to that out. Smart to figure that out. You have local requirements. You may have local memorandums of understanding that's going to fire department. What if this is in county B, like you have in the description? And I have to call, I'm going to point it here to different counties. Now, relocate across lawn for night. What's the director who's responsible for it? And keep that. These are primary. But from the 911 side, also, you know, most departments don't go, oh, that was 5 feet in somebody else's territory, I can't listen to call. But on the law enforcement side, it is certainly a big issue for Colorado because there is no fuzzy room here. The line is 100%. When you're there will always be some place in the world where you can have your foot in your right foot, your left foot in your county. That's it. And so we absolutely got to be careful of our point placement. One, to have them on the structure. To have them on the structure is we actually have the XY coordinate at that point of structure. So if for some reason there is a disaster, like a tornado, where the travel there isn't always the easiest thing to do. The actual location people will be at. That all makes sense? So, explain. If you're on the phone that might not have been able to hear that, if you on the structure and the image that you have on the screen, then county is going to get the call, but county B is likely the fire department that would have responded. So, remember, this is about when dispatch center gets the call. Still, the dispatch center that would get this call should be county A, and then they would either call or have to call out fire department from county B. But if you have a local agreement, let's say, this house appears to be a county A, for all intents and purposes, because it would take us so much longer to get there, we want somebody to respond. Somebody who's going to handle it. That's just, you're going to have that. But a lot of jurisdictions, handshakes. Nothing formalized. There really needs to be something formalized. A small piece of paper that says so. If you are an MP and you are responding to this house, you point here, as close to as you can get it, so we are the X, Y, as we can possibly get. You're still in jurisdiction and you're still getting calls. Paper on file. Okay? If you and you and county are supposed to receive every way. You're supposed to receive the call. You're supposed to, with your fires, whatever else, as close to the structure as you can get it and still be inside your jurisdiction. Oh, go ahead. When you're talking responders, or are you talking receiving the 911 call? Nebraska PSAP receives 911 calls from houses in your county? Big concern. Big concern 911 is call routing. What you do in terms of response can be handled at the local level and does not have to be reflected in these maps. Sometimes it's really complicated. Bottom line is, the wrong jurisdiction for this, but if County B is Nebraska and County A is Kansas, point 6 is where the call is going to go. It doesn't matter what you thought or what you should have thought. It doesn't matter who had it in mind. The point is not what agreements were in place. So the point needs to be Nebraska if it should ring at a Nebraska 911 center. The point needs to be Kansas if it should ring at a Kansas 911 center. Even if the 911 center is going to be all Nebraska units, we're just transferring the calls to Nebraska. Wherever the call should ring, that's what it needs to be. And just the structure as is reasonable within that boundary. Sure.
In January, our setup, it's a horse farm, property in Kansas. This would be they do houses right here along the road, but the horse barn is back on the east side of the state. These people active, probably these folks active in Missouri, but the farm hands and renters that live in these houses here, they must be Kansas. So because of the access off Kenneth Road, this area has a Kenneth Road address and actually has a still postal code. We have the 911 database set up from the dial 911, goes to the Belton Police Department. But because Belton Fire has absolutely no way to get any of the vehicles to that address, they automatically go for any fire medical call. We handle it just like it's our own. And about an hour later, they'll show up after we're popping up. Or so we kind of handle it. We have records in the GIS houses in Missouri, but we're covering them first to treat it like a little.
But in the end, the point's going to have to be in Missouri.
Yeah.
Where the 911 calls.
Right. So yeah, the point actually sits in Missouri. It's on the Kansas map. Area. Bill. And Tony.
And
that's what I'm calling it. It's practice. I got another good example. Miami County. County has 6 or 7 fire department response areas, only 3 of them based in Miami County. They come with providers in Johnson County and Franklin County, covers Fort Lee County. Johnson County is handled by Drexel, Missouri. Drexel, Missouri is just east of the state line. On the west side of state line, the Missouri phone numbers, however, because of the way the ESN set up, that those customers with those phones go to the office, then for EMS, they come up to our center, and if they need the fire department, they transfer it to the Kansas County Sheriff's Department, that's built out directly to the fire department.
Seriously, I'm gonna look into this, and I'm gonna look into the MSAC records, where things are. Yeah. Well, yeah. But what I discovered, this is around having Sarah Lynn who is here today around, have been really illuminating for me. Because when I talk about they deal with their MSAC, and I've been responsible for the MSAC for over 10 years. Let's talk about how they deal with their MSAC. I was flabbergasted. Because 100 things they talk about that literally I've requested, and I'm not the only one who has requested for AT&T to do. But they told us no, it's not possible. Because for a reason. It's easier to do every one of their groups by hand than just the bulk changes they have in 1 year. Seriously. But within this process, we have been able to get a lot more movement. So I will take a look. We have access. We have access to a couple of people at AT&T that can help us out, and we'll see what we can do with this. Because what you're explaining may very well be the case, but it is going to fail as NextGen 911 starts. Either that, or you're going to have a point to size of the state line. It's just how the system practically works. It's not anybody's opinion. It's okay. Right.
Right now, we're going to get a program. We're going to have
that's what we're here for. That's what Scott's here for. Is people call, and when they say, "Oh, there's nothing we can do about that," yeah. Yeah.
that exchange, that
Right, kind of what I wondered. Start communicating with the AT&T basically about it now. It's something where that's a section they want to use for these to do some other things. So. Yeah. Could be, yeah. So, I don't know if it delves well into that, so thank you very much for bringing that up. I bet it's not the only place we'll run into it. Yeah. Go into the address points in the document right quick so that you can see the address points attributes. There's just a few I want to talk about. Okay. So the most address points are what you would expect. They look like a road center line without all the left and right stuff. They are pretty much uniform that way. Down to the secondary, what the Postal Service calls the secondary address. You have more unit type and designator for things like 101. And my idea that you would have this than something else as if somebody does somewhere. So, this one is the one that you really desperately need to be worrying about if you have apartments. And like I said, it could be apartment 101, spot 6, whatever needs to be in there. It's reasonable to put building 2 in here instead of being a 2 in the building field. And I say that is because I've had a couple of questions, people call questions where software does not have room for a building. You can't process that. So if you here, putting the whole thing down here in unit, their CAD software won't be able to read it. What works best for you and getting everything correct for geocoding purposes. And building 2.1 in that field is just fine, in the unit field. I'm sorry, you guys on the phone can't see me pointing, but building 2, building 2, apartment 2, outside the unit field is just fine. I checked with Nina on that, and agree totally. Those other fields are there because there are people that need them, but you may not know those people. So don't worry about having to break everything into its unique and separate location, if that's suitable for you.
You have a seat on there is for congregation.
Yeah.
So whether it's church or a restaurant. Yeah.
I also think that maybe large coliseums, when you're trying to, having a heart attack, 9C6. Yeah, so I was like, okay. Their description in the Nina standard is just ugly. There's a bench in a room, and they have like seat 4 on that bench, and you're like, but there's no seat 1 through 3. What is that? All right. So, what? Just like, I didn't realize that like spontaneously. It's not meant to be. It should be. I'm sorry, guys. All right. Let us come over here and go to. Can I get there? There you go. So, this is something that Nina has in the data, and it is for the common name of the location, like putting McDonald's or Walmart, that kind of thing. Populate that or not, it is an optional field, but it can be really valuable. So it's to make sure people understand what it is. Above it, the LOC field. LOC field is a part of the subaddress not listed above, is what this says. And Nina's description of it essentially is, if you need this part of the subaddress, it doesn't fit anything else, put it in the LOC field. You'll notice a very long free text field. That's one of the fields that they only had set at 300 characters that they brought in 55 when we put it out. That would mess up some software. You have fields. Let me pop down a little bit. We have a last one. Those are Nina fields. We have above mean sea level. You're welcome to use that or not. Nina is envisioning that as about floors of a building, not the actual elevation of the identify how high up off the ground an address is. So slope type. This is a mandatory field. Actually, no. Did I say higher? No, I'll move it down here a little bit so that the guys on the phone can see what I'm talking about. Yeah. Place titles that we have in that we are telling you, although it is conditional, you do not ever have to fill it out. Nina put into the standard, and what they said was to be able to identify what type of facility each point is a residence, is it a store, church, that kind of thing. Great idea. Whole lot of work. Whole lot of head. But even worse, they identified a very specific item off of a standard that was being set had to be used. You could use that list, and you could use only that list. And it was not by emergency service people of any kind. It is a no list. It breaks them into 6 categories that never once gives you the opportunity to call something a cell tower. It does, but it doesn't do any other kind of medical facility. It is not appropriate. It isn't going to work. And it's a really tough time figuring out what to do because they want to include, but they got to find a working list, and they're really running into issues. They also want it to be free text. They don't want the code they get from somewhere. How not they will ever get to this is kind of in question. But understanding from Mark Berryman that they are going to change it to optional because they don't have a good list. We took on that, and here it's conditional because Nina has it as conditional, but you may ignore that for right now and just leave it empty until it's found. That was my recommendation as well, because you can get as granular as you need to, or you can keep them really high level. They're great. And they went code, no. Dispatchers don't know the code. I think that you can put the code, you can have it as the text, and that ought to be just fine. But it is. So there you go. We'd have had unanimous form here. But the great ideas of a list, a standardized published list of locations that would work. Let me know. I can either give you the contact information so that you can contact me, or I will send it on because they are pretty desperately looking for that. I got confused in the first place. Locations for people that want to actually have to have it, and it needs to be primary for every point in your data, unless you want to go and add a structure point for your house. To do that, counties that are probably going to begin to do it now. There's no problem if you want to do that, but you have to have every point has to be unique and for the next one to work. You can't choose 707 Northwest 6th Street. Cannot. So you'll have on the building marked as primary and say that way, marked as access. You'll standard where the points are for different things that you can put in that field are. That way the point type is there to allow you the flexibility to keep multiple points if you want to. It's very important. We have very confusing driveways. We need that point for responders. We have that single primary point. So if you put them in, make sure you mark them correctly, and we will filter everything that's primary out for next gen purposes. USR is optional. So we have, and once you have the lat and long filled out from above, we have a tool that relates to USNG for you if you want the national grid coordinates for all points. And the final one is the KV, or the 19-digit parcel identifier from the CAM software. And the reason that is in there is because of that place type. There's an inside camera that will make populating that place type of a very once we know what the list is. What the parcel number is for the address point. For those of you having the grant-funded remediation vendor work on your data, you can ask them to populate that parcel number if you have a layer for them, if you have information for them to work with. To go, should that place type ever come in, and then we, being the council and subcommittee, will work out a translation script to take whatever LVCS code is out of CAMA and turn it into the appropriate place type as needed to find it. Data preparation, and I wouldn't do it yet. We don't know how long it's going to take Nina to get this figured out. So the suggestion is that you just hold off on doing it until closer to the time so that you have appropriate parcel number. But be able to do that in-house having your relationship vendor now is a really good idea, so that you have about address points. Not even playing all over what we're doing. Awesome. Okay. Boundary layers, and these are actually really quick, because there's about poly. The authoritative boundary layer is the poly that represents the geographic area for which your data is authoritative. For most of the county boundaries, it may not be a county boundary for you, maybe a much larger area, so Mark Reaches, for example, or someplace like that. Maybe just a city boundary if you have a municipal PSAP. Or donut, where if the tribe is submitting their own data at some point, you're not submitting the data for the reservation. Your authoritative boundary is probably in the reservation. So it is a pretty simple method of doing. It's helping us define and helping Nina define. This is Nina required information. Who's responsible for the data in each little AI. Polygon. The first one is the emergency service boundary layers. Representing the service areas for your emergency services. All the law enforcement, fire, EMS, and staff, which for most of us is going to be the same as the authoritative boundary. But if it isn't, if you have multiple PSAPs in your jurisdiction that you are responsible for their data, you could have polygons there. Could be responders, rescue, special task force units, anything else that goes over a different geographic area than other cities. You can either as a bunch of separate layers or as one layer using the smallest common cut rule, basically ESN. There's kind of an explanation inside the standard, but the majority of people I think are storing it as a bunch of different layers, right? Some think about the emergency service boundaries. This is one of Nina's things, is that your identifier for each of those polygons has to be unique across all your emergency service boundaries, and that's a little odd. You cannot have one in your law and a number one in your fire. If polygons and you choose to use a numbering system like that, one is in your law enforcement and your fire needs to be 20s or 200s or what. They have to be unique across the entire set of emergency service boundaries. Just to me, Nina's going to want to search. That's just me as I listen to them talk. We're going to require that you store them that way. So just keep that in mind as you're going forward. If you use the tool, the unique identifier tool that we have available for download, it is going to make a unique identifier. It's almost impossible to get the same number twice. It would have to be of a second on both ones at the same time. So I mean, it's pretty tough. Service zone layer, these are the polygons for your ESN. If you have one, it's the equivalent of your enforcement, fire, and EMS polygons almost together. You'll be into your egg and find out that your insect does not think that's what it looks like. So, ESD will eventually be obsolete, but that is not today. They're important right now. They will be as long as any of the phone companies are using selective routing. We're going to have them. I think it is reasonable. It could be 10 years. So I think it's reasonable. Can represent more than one emergency service agency. And NG911 will be able to relay all that information to call takers. When you take that fire layer, for example, what you are doing is creating the polygon. The name display field is actually what is called in the standard, is what is going to get sent to the dispatcher just like alley now. So I've had a question recently, what do I do if there's two? This is actually between city fire department and township fire department both, because this particular responds to both first call out. It's not place. There's just data for the dispatcher to look at. There's no one putting a slash in it and saying, you know, Abilene FE slash Grant Township FE, that kind of thing. Is appropriate for you. That kind of coming up in the alley already in the new jurisdictions, and there's nothing wrong with doing it in this. So don't feel like you've got to have a polygon for Abilene, cover the city of Abilene, and a polygon that covers Grant Township, and then panic when they overlap. No, that is a separate polygon that is Abilene slash Grant. Are you guys looking for it? Okay. Right. Go from that show on one, unfortunately. Yeah. But it's the type of people are going to have to figure out, because they can't just be fixing on their data because they're in this issue. You know, whether they're following and flip saving or yeah. So let's talk topology of these for just a minute, of these polygons. Their attributes are very simple. I'm not going to go through what's in them because there's not that much there. To understand that every single millimeter of your authoritative boundary has got to be filled with a bound from every one of those ESD layers that you mentioned. So if my rectangle, another, a rescue squad, and the second quarter of the rescue squad B, and the last quarter of it doesn't have one. We just ability. John over there that says none. The computer, NG911 needs to know what to do every square inch of your authoritative boundary. Same thing with ESDs. They absolutely fill your authoritative boundary. The other is, after they've completely filled it, they cannot use them. Two fire in the same place. True, like I was talking about, you gotta break that into a third polygon and call it both. So believe it or not, actually get the GIS data section of the standard. There's no detail and specific location type information in there, like pulp stacks and what to do with dual carriageways and things like that. But you're going to go to the book and look at it rather than be boring people in detail. A couple of things before I move on to the MTech. You are not aware, there is out there what are called the template geodatabases. And they are one for Kansas State Plain North, one for State Plain South. They are geodatabases that I built to the they have no data. You can go and load your data in there. We actually have a video online now where I explain how to load data from a shapefile or from another database into them, in case you're not sure how to get that accomplished, so that you can bring the data into shape. This is a way meant to encourage you to try to do it on your own. Everybody has a different skill level and everybody has a different amount of time locally. For me, we're using those geodatabases. I don't know any of them at all. Based on your typo correction, thank you, sir. So, we've been really busy with this project since the beginning, and when I went, hey, I've got these templates, everybody was like, great, let's get them out. been walked through by anybody but me, and I was kind of rolling through them. So we are finding little things like Jason said out to me that a couple of ID fields should have been characters, and I had 24 in there, which was seen as original guideline. Every while I put a new version out there, it's changed something minor. If it does change anything significant that I think is going to really affect people that have already downloaded it, I send an email going, hey, I just did this. You need to do yours if you have one. Some of them are pretty small, that aren't affecting too much for most people. You're welcome to look at them. There is no requirement for you to store your data in them permanently, although we would very likely that you would submit your data once it's remediated in that format, just because Jessica's South's QA process was built off the idea that the data was going to specifically meet the standard, and by putting it in the database, it will. So, websites at the end, you can download. Depending on time, to get a couple of more videos up, one going over the attributes in detail, along with some just populate them. If you said at all, kind of what I did in the county to populate them is the easier ways to, 99% of my roads, Dickinson is the left county and the right side county, so how to kind of do that really fast so that you're not having to monthly. But those people out there, also we are working on putting a class that's going to cover not data remediation, but for ongoing maintenance, which data is past QA to continue to maintain it. And we're put together for people to sit down and talk about how to maintain it in the long run and some of the skills that might be necessary to do that. If there are things we are missing in helping you with this, don't hesitate to know. We may go steps beyond what we have the ability to do, but we sure like to hear what you think you might need. So, one of the things that we're trying to do is to get the actual MSAG at the phone company so it matches the centerline file, because for a lot of us, the MSAG, because I'm one of them, MSAG has gone way out of reality, way out of focus with reality. My ad software vendor at our county, where dispatchers get recommendations for police fire, they don't know what GIS is. It is meaningless to them. They don't look at it. And when we put the new software, one of the most frequent questions the dispatchers ask is, hey, can they take that off there? I don't do that. That's just silly. You can a road in good shape, but they're just way off. Updating that the way we ought to be. It's significant to us. The calls come to us, that's where it needs to come, and then we figure out if it's sitting with county. But we're inside in shape, partially to help us, partially to help our citizens, but also partially to assist the phone company. At some point, those telephone numbers, which are currently mapped to a very specific ESN, are going to have to move over and begin hitting centerline. And if you use your MSAG so that it matches your centerline, all the numbers are going to have addresses that hit the MSAG, not addresses that hit the centerline. And to avoid this, we have MSAG remediation. So you do the comparison between that file and your MSAG. It's going to give you a list of every road in your centerline file, or in combination if you have ESNs in your centerline. Every that exists in the centerline, but not the MSAG, the list of everything that exists in the MSAG, but not the centerline. Some of those have been very long. They indicate research that has to be done to figure out which of the two is correct. Then you get a third test, which checks the ranges fit inside. It's going to be horrible for Johnson County because it's only going to test one direction. If the adventure line generally has actual ranges, meaning they stop at like from 100 to 150, and it generally runs from 100 to 599, then is going to test if your center ranges fit inside your inside range. If they don't, get in there. Your center lines have potential ranges 1 to 199, and your inside has actual ranges 1 to 115. They're separate GIS. If your data is preponderant, so you're getting a list that has no meaning for you. Yes, sir. Yeah. This anyway. Yeah. Right. Oh. That's awesome. I forgot about that. That is awesome. I knew as you were talking about doing it both ways that the test is going to be set. That test is going to be there. It may have a deal of meaning and it may have no meaning. Some of the things identified in there may be errors and it may not be. But take your road name comparisons between the two you need to get the test. Because especially if there are telephone numbers associated with them, because that needs to be addressed. Vendors will produce a specially formatted spreadsheet with the changes that need to be done in the MTAG, part of what we put together in communicating with both Century and AT&T. Have a copy of the template, and CenturyLink both have a copy of the template. If you are an AT&T customer, I think I only need to get this blocked out, so I'm going to wait till it comes back. CenturyLink customer. If you're a CenturyLink customer, you have 20 fewer errors. They will be asking you to use the web interface. I don't know if you have a finance for it, but they're asking you to use the web interface to submit them. But if you have more than 25, they'll do it. Just send in the spreadsheet, we'll handle it. I'll just real quick when he comes back in case it matters. Okay. AT is a different matter. Feels like the work will be too much for them to do for us to send in the spreadsheets directly. They don't feel like they have the staff time. So we have been meeting and we have been in what are kind of long-term negotiations about it. It's broken down to the idea to have a lot of flex edits, and most of these are going to be changes. Rows and inside records need to be split, combined, massage, played with. AT&T will do it. It's easier to do it for you to try to do it through the web interface. It is all pretty simple stuff, like in your it's all first road with a 1, and it's all first road FIRST, they like you to go in. Taking a look at those spreadsheets, and it's kind of assist in the negotiations, kind of keep the possible with the local jurisdictions, but we know that there's going to be a whole hand entry that has to be done. Your will produce a spreadsheet, they will not do the data entry. You got to do it again. Now AT&T has offered, and they offered one training for it, to give specifically the MTAG coordinators about how to go from this spreadsheet to their workday. Now it changes it. Any way associated with a 911 center, and the AT&T customer, please pass it along. One of the first things that happened after we had put this information out, AT&T sent messages out to some of their site coordinators and said, hey, we have this training, and they said, we don't know what you're talking about. So please communicate it back to your 911 center. Please take it and communicate it to anyone that you know that's associated with one. We're trying to via email, but it's kind of gotten to the point, there's so much about this project, I think that some people are going, oh, again. So it's something AT&T is doing to anyone, and it's really actually a fairly generous thing, so we need to take advantage of it if we can. Thank you, I got to mention it. You're done. well, I don't know, you were going, I don't know, did you do the second, work on the first, was it staff? My name is Sarah Lynn Staffen. Sarah Lynn Hayes with Mark, she's the Insight Coordinator for Mark. First up, the entire OTAG, from CenturyLink and AT&T, the entire state. And I did every place where the abbreviation for the most directional and street type didn't Postal Service standard. A whole lot of them, because when disk space was really expensive, the phone companies decided that they were not going to use more than 2 characters for abbreviation. They decided that if it was street, they wouldn't put anything. All they did disk space. Well, some of the data has been updated and some of it hasn't. So first step, and they looked at every single record, found all of them, and we submitted spreadsheets to both CenturyLink and AT&T. And yesterday I got a message from CenturyLink that they have finished the update. They're done. Your CenturyLink records have all changed. So, AT&T is working on them, but they're not done. Yeah. One of the others that has come up, like I said, the phone companies have been putting at least some jurisdictions and seconds on their own. So what we're kind of running into, what I have seen in a few of the tests that we've done, this is where you've got the whole thing, in fact, it's 205, because one address is in there, it's the first box, and you need to out. There seems a lot of that kind of error that's moving forward. I have all the questions about what to do when the phone number is wrong. Because when you submit a change to AT&T and probably to CenturyLink as well, and you say, hey, this says it should be the 2nd Street, actually 2nd Avenue. Sorry, we have a house that's on 2nd Avenue and we can't, or street, we can't change. Companies have said if you get like that and you believe that the address of the phone needs to be changed, notify them by email and they will research that and figure it out. It's not something you should have locally, you just need to notify them there's a problem. Which bothering on AT&T is, which is the TN corrections can be submitted via email. So just to run through a couple of quick things. There are areas that in your gap analysis report AOS will speak about that I have not covered. And that is the actual grant funded remediation into 2 phases. The first one covers road lines, these things I talked about today. We're going to get all of that statewide done and see where we're at financially before we tackle the step. That is necessary. You can't do anything without it. Second step, but you can all without it. And you can get dispatchers most of the information that they need and certainly everything they're getting now without it. So we see kind of statewide once we're done. This is an incredibly ambitious project, and the one thing that there was really no way to do ahead of time is anticipate how big or small it was going to end up being as far as money goes. These have all of the technical capability in the world and just don't have the time to do their remediation. So you couldn't designate that these people would do their own, and these people would have to get remediation vendors that couldn't be evaluated. So in phase 2, the one question that on a fairly regular basis. Municipality boundaries or the city boundaries, why is that in phase 2? There are boundaries out there that don't have any impact on 911 at all. In my county, I have, of the 9, I only have 3 that have police permits. So, you know, parts of it, all the legal records and all the research and all the wrangling and the disagreements that we have, everything, because everything does. So, but phase 1, we sit in phase 2, so you have a law enforcement layer, so you're going to have to get city limit boundaries for those cities that have their own police department or own fire department. But for those that do not, it's just a penny thing to hold off on those municipal boundaries until we have everything else. I've already gone over this, what we pay for. Most of the reason that was even in there in the first place is to discuss that you can't use grant to get somebody to go in and drive a driveway in your county or something like that. It needs to be relevant to 911. Using the change report, they're not entering what is on the change report into AT&T system or CenturyLink system. There's the production of the change reports. What needs to happen in AT&T system to pay the vendor's hourly rate to do data entry like that, because it is a slow process. Get back, like in that circumstance, is on the federal line file they produced should also be what they MSAG change order. If the MSAG needs to change, it should have that in there. Does that make sense? Okay. The remediation vendors would ignore that kind of research because that's exactly what we're paying them for. If you have information that one working with you is ignoring their research to that point, let us know. Because what they should be doing is if they're looking at the and then it's a one in your center line and text in your MSAC. They should search and then fix it. Everyone's broken. If the center line's broken, they fix it. If the MSAC's broken, they put an entry in this spreadsheet for you to make the change. Which is whatever is appropriate in the county. There's no on how the road was legally done. Sorry. What? Yeah, I'm sorry for understanding. Well, they you about the error though, or not error, but how it needs to change. What right should look like. Right. The legal, whether it's a one or text, is based off what is on the map and what the city commissioners, the county commissioners did. Okay. Specific about that earlier, but the legal road name. Right. That's something. Let me do this right quick before I get about it. That's something very clear about that in the center line file. You have to have the local addressing authority is using. So like 15 in our county is HWY space 15, because that's in-line addresses. When you leave our go into Clay County, it becomes K15. The road name is because that's how they assign address.
Physical address, highway, key line,
Right.
free, but supposed to be state.
There's other naming standards, and that's why we have the road alias table, because whether you're using HWY15 like I do, or K or K15 high like Clay County does, there has to be an entry in the road alias table that says, hey, this is K15. It doesn't matter what the name is, so that as you cross our county boundaries, even if we had chosen a different name for addressing when we assigned our addresses than they did, we have to trace that out through the county. So this, you can't fix what your local government authority decided. You can't fix what your cities are assigning for some of their addresses. We can't do anything with that. But we can record as well as possible the highway tracks and the in the center line is the address of the authority. Yes? For a whole this stuff has been going for a long time. We've just, it's just how we've done it. Wrong with it. It's not like we were doing it wrong. It worked. But in trying to get our data statewide to support this new technology, we're going to have to formalize some of those things. I think there's going to have to be a lot of that kind of thing. There's going to be a lot of, like, we changed our road names to your resolution, and 492, right in that area. But we go back and fix them, and we just had to fix one this year because of this project, because when I was doing something of my data, I went to AOS because I was trying to check some of the things we put in the standard and see if they were reasonable and realistic. I discovered there's something that I've looked at the data for almost 20 years as a dispatcher and a GIS person. We had 15 blocks of Highway 43. We had miles apart. There were curves that come back, and the curve had the same curve blocks in our county to the north-south section all above it, and we had to change the name for potential addresses along there because of the conflict. And there's just a whole lot that we locally have gone, okay, what am I going to do with this? But in handing it, putting it into this large data set, we're going to have to get more formalized with this. So, to be clear, I kind of put this together. You are the test of your CAMA data. Your CAMA data is your road center line. So, fix CAMA. Somebody's going to go in and fix the addresses in CAMA. It would be great if everything lined up, but like Jessica said, that test was done specifically to provide mediation vendors and you as a local remediator with an idea of volume of address points that may not be either driveways or public roads that don't have any bearing for addresses. You created boundaries, and that you have essentially authority to put into the next gen 911 system that's created. Any research time for populating attributes that are considered up, so like they can't find all of your road surface types. Not a reasonable use of the money. and then entering the site changes. That I was talking about, down, it is the DASC site under Initiatives, the NG911 and the Rating Council page is the Geographic Information System page. There are a couple of exceptions that I want to talk about right quick before I finish up. I think I've done this at like super speed, so Jessica is nodding. Hopefully everything is fast as this is major exceptions that we need to record. We have a rule in the topology for the data standard that you can have what is called a dangle with a row center. That means that all of your row center lines must touch another row center line end to end. That is appropriate for dead end roads in your cul-de-sac. We have connectivity where we're supposed to do. So what we do is go back through and mark all of the dead end roads and cul-de-sacs as exceptions once you have topology. Comments their mediation vendors are. There will also be eventually, but when I say eventually, it could be several weeks or a couple of months. There will eventually be a video up showing that. But you mark, hey, you guys can ignore this one. This one is supposed to not touch anything. You have a rule. You have to be inside the authoritative boundary. I just brought it up again. For those of us with rural area, we know that gravel roads and dirt roads cannot run straight, and they move. They change depending on who's maintaining them and how early in the morning or late at night they're driving the road grader. If they are forming your county boundary, for example, which happens with most of them, run straight up and down the county boundary. There's a phase as you follow the center in and out a little bit. So you will have exception to that. It must be inside your authoritative boundary, but only reason. It is fading in your authoritative boundary because your authoritative boundary runs down the section line, but the road is just a little bit off. That's cool. They cross the authoritative boundary and keep them in there, but mark them as exceptions. I think the template geodatabases are out there, because if you mark those exceptions inside the template geodatabase, they will still be marked. So review those and make errors when they aren't. That was a whole lot throughout you in a fairly short period of time. Anybody have questions that they didn't bring up? Yeah.
Will your structural form will be authorized to have a structural form?
Yep.
Not mitigated that.
So tell them that they need to act. See, they're not getting one on every barn that's in your town. I promise.
I have your promise on that.
Yeah.
I'm accustomed to them doing exactly that.
The biggest thing that you need to understand, somebody that is going to be involved with a remediation vendor, is that they need your input. And one of the things that you're going to have to do, if you believe that your address layer is not complete, I think every resident in my county has a point. We have a city we haven't done it in. For what it is for, I do need them to go through. Maybe provide them with data camera, or maybe we're going to provide them with a parcel layer showing them which places are there. Or maybe just going to provide them a list of phone numbers of the recent phone lines. But to go through the aerial topography and mark on every building would be goofy on your part, and it would be goofy on your part. So that's certainly not something that they're going to do.
I'm hoping they will not.
So am I. So here, I'm sure they're going, no, we're not going to do that.
We can propose.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll
Sure.
Give the whole list of new points to say assign address. We don't assign address. She has to go on.
Right. Honestly, they're not authorized in this project to assign address for it. They're not going to be able to put the point because they're not going to be able to fill out all the attributes that go along with that. one in here, so what about on the phone? Does anybody have any questions on the phone? And again, I apologize for bringing my way past your guys' understanding. Okay. Websites that are on the screen right now, I highly recommend that you check it regularly. This is where any videos to scheduling any upcoming training. We're hoping to do quite a bit at CAM, but we're also looking at having a session, like I said before that, because some people will be getting their data back soon, especially in Region 1. Some people learn how to maintain the data, and you don't have to wait till it's your region to attend something like that. You can come earlier if you wanted to. So look regularly. They will be updated. Yes?
At this point,
nobody can hear you on the phone. So I'm going to talk quietly and explain what you were talking about.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah. In short, just explain, at the, they're partners at the state level for imagery, but we'll hope that as some of the state agencies begin imagery, that they're going to begin sharing the cost as time goes forward, that they'll be able to get other people associated with it, so that not a burden paying for it is on 911 funds coming from the council. So that's just quietly without you. This is a room. Comments? Quick torture on people? It's not less higher training, so
try to get it this tomorrow and get over to the case for the state early. So probably early next week, we'll make sure that email gets out.
We also have basically a YouTube account, which is where the video, if you go to the DAS site and look for the video for data into the GIS template, that is a YouTube video. I'm going to try to post some of these videos out to that account so that people have to do a big download or deal with a viewer computer to be able to look at this. Already mentioned, if we can get that any workshop that we give is going to get taped so that people can review it that haven't been there or that didn't have the opportunity to go. And I recommend that you, like I said, keep an eye on the website because we're going to get as much information out there to you as we possibly can. But at this point, it kind of seems like the emails we send out, which we will keep sending, are reaching the people that they need to. So if you are getting a lot of good information through the email, please check the website. Everything that we do is listed there, both in the data and the Florida Council site. So. Thank you very much. That is the end of our presentation, unless somebody else in the committee has something to add.